She put Ethan Cole on the floor in 3 seconds. Nobody had touched the timer yet. Nobody had said go. He had stepped toward her. Just stepped. Not even a real approach. And then he was on the mat, looking up at the ceiling, with no memory of how he got there. The training room went absolutely silent. Master Chief Reeves had 25 years of combat behind him. He had seen things that rewired a man permanently. But he stood in that room watching Maya Carter roll her sleeve down with one calm hand and felt something he hadn't felt since Afghanistan. He felt uncertain. Again, he heard himself say. She looked at the remaining 4. Gladly. Subscribe to the channel right now, follow every part until the very end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. Nobody at Naval Base San Diego expected her. That was the first thing everyone said afterward, when people started asking questions, and the story began making its way through the hallways and briefing rooms and mess halls, the way stories always do inside a military installation. Quietly at first, then everywhere at once. Nobody expected her. Nobody recognized her name. Nobody had requested her presence. She simply appeared. She walked through the security checkpoint at 0612 hours on a Tuesday morning in late October, showed her credentials to a young petty officer who almost sent her to the wrong building, and then found her own way to the Advanced Combat Evaluation Center without needing directions from anyone. That detail alone should have told people something. The evaluation center wasn't listed on the general base map. It didn't have signage visible from the main corridor. Visitors who were supposed to be there always needed an escort. They needed someone to walk them through 3 separate security doors, past 2 manned checkpoints, and through a final access corridor that required both a keycard and biometric clearance. Maya Carter found it alone. She stood at the final security door and placed her palm flat against the biometric reader before the duty officer inside had even finished reviewing her credentials packet. The reader confirmed her clearance in 1.4 seconds. The door opened. She stepped through. Senior Petty Officer Grady Holt. The duty officer that morning stared at his screen for a long moment after the door closed behind her. He checked the clearance level that had just pinged on his system and read it 3 times because he was certain he had misread it. He hadn't misread it. He picked up the phone and called Master Chief Reeves. "Chief," he said, "we have a situation." Daniel Reeves had been running the Advanced Evaluation Program for 6 years. Before that, he had spent 19 years in the field, 2 deployments to Afghanistan, 3 to Iraq rotations through Yemen, Somalia, and 3 locations he still couldn't discuss in conversation without checking the room first. He had led units that operated in conditions most people couldn't comprehend, made decisions under pressure that had saved lives and haunted him equally, and come home to find that the work he was built for existed just as completely in training rooms as it did in combat zones, because he understood something that most senior operators eventually came to understand. The war didn't end when you came home. It moved. It moved into the training halls, into the evaluation rooms, into the minds of the people you were responsible for preparing. Every operator who came through his program was eventually going to stand somewhere in the world with their life on the line, and what they had learned or failed to learn in his facility would determine what happened to them in that moment. He took that responsibility without a single hour of apology. How was 51 years old, built like someone who had stopped caring about looking approachable somewhere around his 3rd decade of service, and he had a reputation inside the community for being one of the few people in the country capable of making elite operators genuinely uncomfortable without raising his voice. When Grady Holt called him that morning, Reeves was already in the training bay conducting pre-session checks with his 4-person team. He listened. He asked 2 questions. He ended the call. Then he set his phone down on the equipment table and looked at the 4 men standing in front of him. "We're getting a visitor," he said. Ethan Cole, who was taping his hands and had been half listening to the call, looked up. "Scheduled evaluation." "No." "Media." "No." "Then what?" Reeves picked up his water bottle. "Intelligence specialist, Navy, 27 years old, She's cleared at a level above this room, and she requested a close combat evaluation against the full team. The training bay went quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then, Lucas Bennett, who was crouched near the equipment wall, checking a harness, stood up slowly and turned around with the particular expression of a man who believed he had misheard something. "She," he said. "One person. One person. Against all 5 of us." That's what was requested. Lucas looked at Ethan. Ethan looked at Ryan Mitchell, who had stopped taping his wrist and was now holding the tape in his hand with the practiced stillness of someone choosing his reaction carefully. Aaron Walker, standing near the door, said nothing. He was looking at Reeves with the measured attention of someone reading a situation rather than reacting to it. Reeves read the room. "Before anyone says anything," he said, "I want to be clear about something. I don't know what this is. I don't know why her clearance is that high. I don't know what she wants from this evaluation or what she's trying to prove. What I do know is that she's on her way to this room right now, and we are going to treat this exactly the same way we treat everything else that happens inside this facility. With respect," Ethan said. That's a lot of words for a situation where a 27-year-old woman with no combat record just asked to go against all 5 of us. "Her combat record," Reeves said, "is classified." That stopped Ethan. It stopped all of them. She came through the door 7 minutes later. Maya Carter was 5 feet 7 inches tall. Dark-haired, lean, in the way that came from functional training rather than aesthetics. She was wearing standard Navy training uniform. Nothing personalized, nothing modified. No visible equipment, no tactical accessories. Her hands were empty. Her posture was the kind of thing Reeves noticed immediately, because posture in a room like this told you more about a person than anything they said, and Maya Carter's posture said something he hadn't expected. She wasn't performing confidence. Most people who walked into an evaluation room at this level performed confidence. They held their chins at a particular angle. They squared their shoulders deliberately. They made eye contact with the senior person in the room first and held it a beat too long trying to establish something. Maya didn't do any of that. She walked in, stopped 3 feet past the door, and looked at each person in the room with the same calm, methodical attention. Not assessing threat. Not posturing. She was cataloging. She was learning the room. She spent exactly as much time looking at Aaron Walker near the door as she spent looking at Lucas Bennett, who outweighed her by 80 pounds and was standing closest to her. She didn't spend extra time on the largest person in the room. She didn't visibly flinch at the size differential. She just looked. Then she looked at Reeves. "Master Chief," she said, "thank you for accommodating this on short notice." Reeves studied her. "Captain Carter." "Maya is fine. Captain Carter," he repeated without apology. "You want to explain to me what exactly you're requesting this morning before I agree to put my team through whatever you have in mind." "Close combat evaluation," she said. "Unarmed, all 5 of you. Full contact within safety protocols. Against you. Against me. 1 round. 1 round. 60 seconds." Ethan made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh, but lived in the same neighborhood. Reeves didn't look at him. He kept his eyes on Maya. "And your purpose?" "I need your team's trust," she said. "This is how I earn it." Reeves was quiet for a moment. That was not the answer he had expected. He had expected a challenge or a demonstration request or some kind of institutional requirement he wasn't aware of. He had not expected honesty that plain and that specific. "You think 60 seconds against my team earns trust. I think 60 seconds is all I need," she said. "After that, trust is your decision." Lucas Bennett stepped forward 1 pace. He was 6'2", 230 pounds, and had a habit of using proximity as a statement. He looked down at Maya with the patience of someone who had watched many people overestimate themselves. "No offense," he said. "None taken," she said before he finished. He blinked. "I was going to say, you were going to say that you respect the request, but you don't want anyone to get hurt," she said. "I appreciate that. I don't intend for anyone to get hurt." Lucas stared at her. "You read people," Reeves said. "Not a question." "It's what I do," she said. Ryan Mitchell had not said a single word since Maya entered the room. He was standing at the left edge of the group, arms crossed, watching everything with the particular stillness of someone who understood that the most important information in any situation was usually the thing nobody was talking about. I had 10 years in the teams, 3 combat deployments. He had operated in an environment where the difference between a correct read and a wrong one was measured in lives, and he had developed the discipline to wait, to watch, to collect, to analyze before he formed a conclusion. He was forming one now. He had been watching Maya since she walked through the door. Not her posture, not her words, those were obvious. He was watching her eyes, where she looked, how long she stayed, what she returned to. In the 30 seconds since she had entered the room, her eyes had moved to each of the 5 team members twice. Not once, twice. The second pass was faster than the first and hit different points, not the same locations, different ones. She wasn't repeating the scan. She was layering it, building a 3-dimensional picture from 2 separate angles. He recognized the technique because it was something he did. He had never seen anyone else do it with that level of casual precision, in a room where they were ostensibly under social pressure. Ryan uncrossed his arms slowly. Aaron Walker noticed. The two of them had worked together long enough that Aaron could read Ryan's physical adjustments the way other people read sentences. Ryan uncrossing his arms in a situation like this meant one thing. Ryan had changed his assessment. Aaron looked at Maya again. He was still quiet, but he was paying a different kind of attention now. Reeves made the decision. Not because he was convinced she could do what she claimed. He wasn't. 60 seconds against 5 operators of this caliber wasn't a realistic expectation for any single individual, regardless of training, and the fact that she was female and 27 and visibly outweighed by the average team member by 60 pounds made the math even cleaner. He made the decision because of what she had said. "I need your team's trust. This is how I earn it." That sentence had structure in it. Not bravado, not ego. There was a functional reason behind her request. She needed something from this team, and she had decided that the only honest path to getting it was through demonstration rather than credential. He respected that framework even when he doubted the outcome. "Ground rules," he said. "Full contact within protocol limits. No head strikes during initiation. The moment someone calls, stop, you stop. If I call it, everyone stops. Clear." "Clear," Maya said. Team Reeves said. 4 voices confirmed. Ryan's was the last. Maya moved to the center of the floor and stood with her feet shoulder-width apart, her hands loose at her sides. She looked at all 5 of them once. Then she looked at the clock on the wall. "Ready when you are," she said. Reeves pressed the timer. The first thing that happened was nothing. That was what nobody talked about afterward when the story spread through the base, but Reeves remembered it. For the first 2.5 seconds after the timer started, nobody moved. Not because anyone was confused about what to do, but because all 5 operators simultaneously and independently hesitated. It wasn't fear. It wasn't uncertainty about the situation. It was something more fundamental and more uncomfortable than either of those things. She was standing completely still. Most people, when they know 5 elite operators are about to move toward them, do something. They adjust their stance. They shift their weight. They look at the nearest person. They prepare themselves visibly. Maya didn't prepare. She was already prepared. She was standing with the stillness of someone who had finished thinking and was simply waiting for the world to catch up. That stillness hit something in the trained minds of 5 men who had spent decades learning to read pre-combat behavior. It sent a signal that didn't fit any expected pattern, and for 2.5 seconds, their trained instincts couldn't process it. Ethan moved first. He came from her left side at speed. Ethan was the fastest person on the team, genuinely and measurably, and he led with his left shoulder angled to throw her balance without committing to a full contact approach. It was a smart, controlled opener designed to test her reaction time and footwork without exposing himself. He never made contact. Maya stepped inside his approach at a 45-degree angle, not back, not sideways inside, and her right forearm connected with his left elbow, At the exact moment his shoulder committed to its direction. It wasn't a strike. It was a redirect. She used the exact vector of his own momentum and added 12 degrees of lateral deviation, and Ethan's body followed the physics of it cleanly and went where the physics said it had to go. He hit the mat on his side. Howe was back on his feet in under 2 seconds. But the 2 seconds had happened, and they had been seen. Lucas came immediately after, because Lucas was the kind of operator who treated hesitation as a mistake and had been well trained to follow the opening move with immediate pressure. He came straight, no angles, no feints, because Lucas had learned a long time ago that against smaller opponents, direct overwhelming forward pressure was more reliable than technique. He was right about that. Against almost everyone. Maya dropped her weight and turned her left shoulder toward him and did something with her hips that changed her entire center of gravity in a way that happened so fast, Reeves watched it twice in his memory afterward. When Lucas arrived at the space where she had been, she was now at his left side and slightly behind him, and she had both hands on his left arm in a grip that redirected his forward momentum into a controlled downward rotation. Lucas went down, not from force, from geometry. He landed on one knee and one hand oriented completely the wrong direction from where he had started. "What in the?" he said. She was already moving. Ryan had been waiting. He hadn't moved yet because Ryan Mitchell didn't move until he understood what he was moving into, and what he was watching had not fit any pattern he had expected, so he had waited and watched and processed. He understood it now. She wasn't defending against attacks. She wasn't reacting. She was predicting, and not just predicting the immediate move, she was predicting the committed direction of force before it was fully expressed and responding to it at the point of maximum mechanical leverage rather than maximum personal risk. It was not a standard system. He had seen MC Map. He had studied Jiu-Jitsu Krav Maga Sistema Scars. He had trained with instructors from 6 different countries. What Maya was doing had elements of several of those things, but the architecture was different. The underlying logic was different. He moved. He came toward her without signaling direction, without committing his shoulders or hips, before he absolutely had to, a deliberately ambiguous approach designed to deny her the pre-commitment read she had been using. He was going to take away her information. She let him come to within 4 feet. Then she moved not away from him, which is what he expected, but parallel to him, 2 lateral steps that put her at his right side during the half-second window when his forward momentum had committed and his lateral adjustment hadn't yet fired. She put one hand on his right shoulder. That was all. One hand. The lightest possible contact. And somehow that contact at that moment on that vector translated his forward momentum into a rotation that left him completely off balance for 3 full seconds while he fought his own physics. He didn't fall. He caught himself. But he had been controlled. He looked at her. She met his eyes. "You read pre-commitment," he said. "Yes," she said. "You changed the leverage point." "Yes." "Your father's system," he said. Maya's expression changed. Only slightly. Only for a fraction of a second. But Ryan had been watching her since she walked in, and he caught it. A flash of something behind her eyes that wasn't surprise exactly, but was the particular quality of someone who had heard a true thing said out loud. 39 seconds had elapsed. Reeves had stopped watching the timer. He was watching Maya. More specifically, he was watching the way she moved between contacts, not the contacts themselves, but the transitions. Every operator had a movement signature, a pattern, a style, something in the hips or the footwork or the shoulder angle that was as individual as a fingerprint and just as useful for identification if you knew what to look for. He had been reading those signatures for 25 years. Maya's signature hit him like a door opening. The weight transfer. The hip angle during lateral movement. The specific geometry of how she positioned her hands before a redirect not touching, yet just positioned, hovering at the leverage point she had already identified. He knew that system. He had trained under that system for 8 months in 2003, when the man who created it had been brought in as an outside consultant to work with his unit before a joint operation in eastern Afghanistan. The man had spent 3 weeks pulling apart everything. Reeves thought he knew about close-quarters movement and rebuilding it from the foundational physics up. He had been the best instructor Reeves had ever encountered. His name was Thomas Carter. Reeves looked at Maya. Captain Carter, he had called her. Carter. He felt something shift in his chest, not sentiment exactly, but recognition. The very specific recognition of looking at a thing and suddenly understanding its full history. She wasn't just Thomas Carter's daughter, she was trained by him, personally, comprehensively. She carried his entire system in her body, not as a student who had learned it from a manual, but as someone who had been raised inside it, who had grown up with it, the way other people grew up with language absorbing it until it became reflex. 51 seconds. Aaron Walker made his move. Aaron was not the fastest or the strongest person on the team. He was the most tactically intelligent, and he had been waiting the way Ryan had waited until he had processed enough information to make a decision rather than a reaction. He came at her from an angle that accounted for everything he had watched. He adjusted his approach for what she had done to Ethan, what she had done to Lucas, what she had done to Ryan. He came in with a controlled grapple attempt, not a strike, not a momentum-based approach, but a direct contact attempt at both wrists designed to take her options away. She let him reach her. She let his hands close on her wrists. Then she rotated her forearms in opposite directions simultaneously. A movement that changed the pressure direction on every point of his grip at the same moment, and Aaron's hold broke cleanly, and his own hands flew wide. She stepped through the gap his broken hold created and was behind him. She put 2 fingers on the back of his neck. "Stop," she said. "This is where it ends." She was not breathing hard. The timer read 57 seconds. Reeves clicked the timer off. The room was completely silent. Ethan was standing with his arms at his sides, looking at a point somewhere on the mat between himself and Maya. Lucas was back on his feet with his hands on his hips, staring at her with an expression that had moved past confusion into something closer to professional respect, and wasn't quite ready to admit it out loud yet. Ryan was watching her with the direct, undefended attention of someone who had encountered a genuine peer. Aaron had taken 2 steps back and was looking at his own hands. 5 elite operators, 57 seconds. None of them had landed a touch on her. Maya turned toward Reeves. She was exactly as composed as she had been when she walked through the door. Not performing composure, actually composed. The kind of composure that didn't come from suppressing a reaction, but from genuinely not having the reaction that most people would have had. "Master Chief," she said. Reeves said nothing. He was looking at her face, and he was seeing Thomas Carter's eyes looking back at him, the same quality of attention, the same depth, the same particular way of looking at a person that suggested they were already 3 moves into a conversation that hadn't started yet. "There's something wrong inside this community," Maya said. "Something that's going to get people killed, and I need your team to help me find it before it does." The room held its breath. "I came here first," she continued, "because you're the best evaluation team in this command, and because I knew that if I walked through that door and asked for your help without proving I could handle myself, you would be polite and useless. And I don't have time for polite and useless." Lucas made a sound. It wasn't quite a laugh. It was what a laugh produced when it had been forced through a filter of grudging respect. 60 seconds, Ethan said quietly, more to himself than to anyone. Ryan hadn't moved. He was still watching Maya. "What's wrong inside the community?" he said. "How wrong?" "Wrong enough," she said, "that a mission 2 weeks ago failed in a way it shouldn't have been possible to fail." "Which mission?" Aaron said. "Operation Stormwall," she said. All 5 men went very still. Reeves felt something cold move through him. Not fear. He hadn't felt fear in the conventional sense in a long time. This was something more precise, the recognition of a real threat presenting itself with its actual shape, rather than the approximation he had been carrying for 2 weeks. "Stormwall was classified at the highest level," Reeves said. "Yes," Maya said. "You shouldn't know the name of that operation." "No," she agreed. "I shouldn't." "How do you know it?" She looked at him steadily. "Because I was the analyst who wrote the original intelligence assessment." The one that was supposed to make it impossible for that mission to fail the way it did. The silence in the room had a different quality now. Ethan had stopped looking at the mat. Ryan had his arms uncrossed. Lucas was very still. Aaron was watching Reeves, because Aaron always watched Reeves when a situation moved past the point where instinct was enough and judgment became necessary. Reeves looked at Maya. He thought about Thomas Carter. He thought about an extraction in eastern Afghanistan in 2003, when his entire unit had been compromised, and the only reason any of them had made it to the recovery point alive was because one man had read the environment well enough and fast enough to find a solution in a situation that had no solutions. I thought about Thomas Carter crouched behind a collapsed wall in the dark, looking at 8 men who were about to die and doing the math that nobody else had the capability to do and coming up with an answer. He looked at Thomas Carter's daughter, standing in the center of his training floor, with no rifle, no equipment, no backup. Having just put 5 of the best operators in the building on the mat in under a minute to earn the right to ask for help. "Tell me everything," Reeves said, and Maya Carter, for the first time since she had walked through the door, allowed herself one small exhale. Because that was what earned trust looked like, and the real work hadn't even started yet. She began to talk. She had prepared for this conversation the way she prepared for everything methodically, sequentially, with contingencies built into every layer. She had anticipated resistance. She had anticipated suspicion. She had anticipated the wall that military institutions built reflexively around information that touched their own failures. What she hadn't fully anticipated was the silence. Not the silence of closed minds. The silence of people listening. She laid out the basic architecture of what she had found. The intelligence assessment for Stormwall had been correct. Her analysis of the target location, the personnel composition, the entry vectors, the timing, windows, all of it had been confirmed by 3 independent source checks before it left her desk. The mission had been built on solid intelligence, and the mission had been compromised within 6 hours of launch, which meant the compromise had not come from her intelligence. It had come from something between her intelligence and the field. "The planning phase," Lucas said. "Yes," Maya said. "Someone in planning," Aaron said. "Someone with access to planning," she corrected. "Which is a different category. Direct access is one possibility. Indirect access, system access, communication access, physical access to planning materials. Those are different possibilities. Before I commit to a direction, I need to eliminate categories." Ryan was looking at her with that direct, unguarded attention again. "You came here to eliminate categories." "I came here because this evaluation center runs every operator in this command through a documented performance profile," she said. "Movement patterns, decision architecture, communication style, stress response." She paused. "Those profiles are uploaded to a shared system after each evaluation cycle." The room went very quiet. Reeves felt it before he understood it fully. The shape of what she was describing assembled itself in his mind, with the particular unpleasant clarity of something you had been looking at for a long time without seeing. "The performance profiles," he said. "Someone accessed them," Maya said. "Specifically the profiles from the 6 operators who were part of Stormwall's assault element, 2 weeks before the mission launched. Those profiles include movement tendencies," Ryan said slowly. "Decision patterns under pressure." "Yes. If someone read those profiles and gave them to the right people, then the assault element walked into a contact zone where the other side already knew how they moved, how they reacted, what decisions they would make under pressure," Maya said. "Not because of human intelligence, not because of surveillance, because someone gave their opponents a technical manual for every person on that team." Lucas sat down. He sat down on the equipment bench near the wall and put his forearms on his knees and stared at the floor. He was processing. Reeves knew what Lucas looked like when he was processing something that reorganized his understanding of a situation, and this was it. "We have profiles in this system," Ethan said. "Yes," Maya said. "From this evaluation center." "Yes." Ethan looked at Reeves. Then he looked back at Maya. "You think whoever accessed the Stormwall profiles might also have access to ours?" I think it's a category I can't eliminate without more information, she said. Which is why I'm here. Reeves looked at her for a long moment. You need access to our evaluation system logs, he said. I need access to your evaluation system logs, she confirmed. And I need your team to help me run a controlled test, to determine whether the access is ongoing or whether it was a one-time penetration. You want to use us as bait, Lucas said from the bench. No hostility, just clarity. I want to use your profiles as bait, Maya said. There's a difference. Lucas looked up. Is there? Your profiles are data, she said. If the access is ongoing, the right data will draw a response. We don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to do anything operationally dangerous. We watch the data, and we watch who moves. Simple, Ethan said. Simple, she agreed. What you're describing, Aaron said carefully, is an internal investigation of special operations security infrastructure. That's not something that normally gets walked into a building by one person. No, Maya said. It isn't. So why are you walking it in alone? She was quiet for a moment. Not the quiet of evasion. The quiet of deciding how much truth was appropriate and concluding that the full amount was the only amount that would serve her. Because I reported what I found through proper channels 2 weeks ago, she said, and the investigation was closed after 48 hours. No findings, no explanation, no corrective action. The room absorbed that. Someone closed it, Reeves said. Someone with the authority to close it, she said, which narrows the category. And you think coming here, Aaron started. I think the people in this room are the people least likely to be part of the access chain, she said. Because your profiles are stored in the same system that was penetrated. If you were part of it, you wouldn't have needed to access the data. You'd already have it. Ryan made a small sound. Not quite a laugh either. It was the sound of someone acknowledging a piece of logic they hadn't wanted to respect, but did. She's right, he said. That's actually clean reasoning. I know, Maya said, without arrogance. Just acknowledgement. Reeves looked at his team. 4 men, all of them looking back at him, each one carrying the same question in a slightly different expression. He had been in situations before where the official structure had failed to account for a real threat. He had made decisions in those situations that weren't in any manual and couldn't be fully documented after the fact. He had trusted his judgment when the institutional framework hadn't caught up yet. He looked at Maya Carter. He thought about her father. I thought about what Thomas Carter had said once, and Reeves could hear the voice as clearly as if it were in the room during a briefing in a forward operating base in the winter of 2003, when someone had asked him why he operated the way he did, why he trusted the things he trusted, and questioned the things he questioned. Thomas had said, "The system protects what it understands. Your job is to protect what the system hasn't seen yet." Reeves took a breath. "All right," he said. "You have the room." Maya nodded once. She reached into the inside pocket of her training jacket and produced a folded document. She unfolded it on the equipment table with the careful movements of someone who had carried it with intention. It was a printed log. 27 lines of access timestamps, user credentials, and file identification codes. Ethan leaned over and looked at it. His expression changed. "These are from our system." "These are from your system," Maya said. "These access timestamps." He stopped. "What?" Lucas said. Ethan looked up. "They're from 2 nights ago." The silence that followed was the loudest sound in the room. The system had been accessed 2 nights ago. Not 2 weeks ago. Not at the time of Stormwall. 2 nights ago. Whoever had done it wasn't finished. And they had come back. The 27 lines didn't move. They just sat there on that equipment table printed in black ink on white paper, and they were the most dangerous thing in the room. More dangerous than 5 SEAL operators. More dangerous than any weapon any of them had ever trained with. Because a weapon you could see coming. A weapon had a direction, a source, a body attached to it. This had none of those things. Ethan Cole leaned over the table and read the timestamps again. Not because he had missed something the first time, because he needed his brain to accept what his eyes were already telling him. 2 nights ago, he said. 2 nights ago, Maya confirmed. That's... He stopped. Recalculated. That's 72 hours after the investigation was closed. Yes. Someone closed the investigation and then accessed the system 3 days later. Yes. Ethan straightened up. He looked at Reeves. Reeves was looking at the document with the expression of a man who had been handed a problem that didn't fit inside any existing framework he owned and was deciding in real time how to build a new one. Lucas stood up from the bench. He crossed to the table and looked at the log without touching it the way you looked at something you weren't certain was safe to handle. "These credential codes," he said. "Can you trace them?" "I already did," Maya said. "They route through 3 internal relay points before they dead-end at a ghost terminal in the administrative annex." Ghost terminal. A machine that exists in the system but not physically. Someone created a virtual access point inside the base network. It looks legitimate to the security layer. It passes every automated check, but there's no hardware attached to it. Ryan had moved to the table. He was reading the log over Lucas's shoulder. "How long has it been there?" 14 months, Maya said. The number landed like a physical thing. 14 months. Not 2 weeks. Not 6 months. 14 months. Whatever this was, whoever was behind it, they had been inside the system for over a year. Patient. Invisible. Collecting. Aaron said what everyone was thinking. Then Stormwall wasn't the first. Maya looked at him. No, it wasn't. She had prepared for this part of the conversation the way a surgeon prepared for a difficult procedure, not by hoping it would go smoothly, but by mapping every point where it could go wrong and deciding in advance how to handle each one. She reached back into her jacket and produced a second document. This one was thicker, 8 pages folded in thirds with a classification header across the top that made Ethan inhale sharply when she unfolded it on the table. "This is above my clearance level," he said. "Yes," she said. "It's above most people's clearance level, which is part of why no one connected the pattern sooner." The document was a compiled incident summary. 12 operational anomalies over 14 months. 12 missions or mission-adjacent events where something had gone wrong in a way that the official after-action reports had attributed to circumstance enemy adaptation or operational error. Maya had not attributed them to any of those things. She had mapped them against the access log. Every single anomaly corresponded to a system access event in the 30-day window before it occurred. 12 times, Lucas said. He was reading page 3. His jaw was set in the way it set when he was containing something he didn't want to express in front of people. 12 separate operations. 12 confirmed, Maya said. Possibly more that I haven't been able to connect yet because the after-action reports were either sealed or incomplete. People died, Ryan said. Not a question. 7 operators across 5 of the 12 incidents, Maya said. 3 more were wounded seriously enough to end their careers. The room held that for a moment. 7 operators, 3 careers ended, and somewhere inside the system that was supposed to protect them. Something had been reading their profiles and passing what it learned to people who used it to put them in the ground. Master Chief Reeves had not said a word since Maya produced the second document. He was reading it. Not skimming, reading line by line, with the thoroughness of a man who had learned a long time ago that the difference between a correct understanding and a wrong one was always in the details that people assumed weren't important. He finished page 1, turned to page 2, read. He turned to page 4 and stopped. He read one section twice. Then he looked up at Maya. Operation Irongate. She met his eyes. Yes. I knew 2 of the men on that team. I know you did, she said quietly. Reeves set the document down. Not roughly. Carefully, the way you set something down when your hands needed something deliberate to do. Irongate was ruled an intelligence failure. The source assessment was determined to be faulty. The source assessment was not faulty, Maya said. I wrote that assessment too. The source was reliable. The intelligence was accurate. The failure happened between my desk and the field. Same mechanism, same access pattern, same 30-day window. Reeves was quiet for a long moment, long enough that the 4 operators around him glanced at each other and then looked away, because there were things happening in the Master Chief's face that weren't meant to be witnessed by a room. Why didn't anyone see this before? Lucas said, not accusatory, genuinely asking. Because each incident was reviewed in isolation, Maya said. After-action reports don't cross-reference access logs. Intelligence assessments don't get compared against system penetration timelines. The people reviewing each failure were looking for the mistake inside that specific operation. Nobody was looking at the space between operations because nobody was supposed to be looking there. Until you, Aaron said. I wasn't supposed to be looking there either, she said. I found it by accident. I was doing a routine verification on a source file for a completely different operation, and I noticed the access timestamp didn't match the mission timeline. It was one line in one document. I almost moved past it. But you didn't, Ryan said. I didn't, she said. Because my father taught me that the most important thing you ever see is usually the thing that almost didn't catch your attention. Reeves picked the document back up. He turned to page 6. He read 3 lines and stopped again. This time his expression didn't show what it was doing beneath the surface, which told everyone in the room that whatever was on page 6 was worse than what was on page 4. The credential codes on the access log, he said. You said you traced them to a ghost terminal. Yes? But you traced them further than that. It wasn't a question. Maya paused for exactly 1 second. Yes. How far? Far enough to identify a pattern in the relay routing, she said. The ghost terminal doesn't send directly. It routes through a secondary relay that exists inside a specific subnet. That subnet belongs to a division of this command. Ethan had gone very still. Which division? Maya looked at him steadily. Operational planning and coordination. Nobody spoke. Operational planning and coordination was not a peripheral office. It was not a support function or an administrative department. It was the division that sat between intelligence assessments and field deployment. The division that took what analysts like Maya produced and translated it into operational orders. The division that every mission in this command touched before it went anywhere. You're saying the leak is in planning, Lucas said. I'm saying the access pattern routes through a subnet belonging to planning, Maya said precisely. I'm not saying who. I'm saying where the signal lives. There's a difference. How many people in that division? Aaron said. 43 personnel with system access at the relevant clearance level. 43. Yes. And you need to narrow it to 1. I need to narrow it enough to identify a credible target for a proper investigation, Maya said. Which I can't do alone, and which I can't do through official channels, because the last time I tried someone with enough authority to close an investigation did exactly that in 48 hours. Ryan said what had been building in the room for the last 5 minutes. Someone in that division knew you reported it. Yes. And closed it before it could reach anyone who would actually pursue it. That's my assessment, she said. Which means, Aaron said slowly, that whoever is in that division has enough institutional reach to kill an internal investigation. Which means, Reeves said, they're not alone. The word landed hard. Not alone. Not one person operating independently inside a system they had quietly compromised. A network. Something with branches. Something with enough organizational weight to access the system. Run 14 months of penetration operations, survive a reported investigation, and keep going. How far does it go? Ethan said. Maya looked at him. I don't know yet. Best estimate. More than 1 division, she said. Fewer than a dozen people, probably, based on what I can confirm. Probably, Lucas said. I won't give you certainty I don't have, she said. What I can give you is a method. A way to draw out the access without alerting whoever monitors the investigation channels. A controlled operation that uses your evaluation profiles as the instrument. Reeves looked at her. Explain. She explained. She spoke for 11 minutes without stopping, laying out the architecture of what she was proposing with the precision of someone who had been building this plan in their head for 2 weeks and had tested every component of it against every objection they could anticipate. The plan was straightforward in concept and intricate in execution. They would modify the performance profiles stored in the evaluation system. not falsify them, but adjust specific data points in ways that would be meaningful to someone who understood how to use operational profiles against their subjects. They would create a version of each operator's movement tendencies and decision patterns that contained one deliberate anomaly. One thing that was different from the real profile in a way that would be invisible to a casual reader, but would produce a specific predictable outcome if that modified profile was used to plan a counteroperation. If the system was accessed again and the modified profiles were used, the counteroperation would fail in a distinctive way. A way that Maya could trace back through the operational record to confirm the connection. "You're building a fingerprint," Ryan said. "I'm building a fingerprint," she confirmed. "And when the fingerprint shows up in an operational failure, then I have direct evidence linking the system access to a specific operational outcome, which is the kind of evidence that can't be closed in 48 hours, the kind that has to go up." "Up to who?" Aaron said. "Above the level that closed the first investigation," she said. "And you're confident that level is clean," Reeves said. Maya was quiet for a moment. "I'm not confident of anything I can't verify," she said. "But the access pattern doesn't reach there, not based on what I've mapped. The subnet stays within the operational planning division. It doesn't route higher." "Doesn't route higher that you can see," Lucas said. "Doesn't route higher that I can see," she acknowledged. "Which is why I need your team, because what I can see has limits. And what you can access inside this facility goes further than what I can reach from the outside." Reeves looked at his team. This was the moment. He knew it, and they knew it. Everything before this, the evaluation, the documents, the explanation had been building to this question. And the question wasn't whether Maya was telling the truth. Reeves had made his assessment on that. She was telling the truth. The question was whether 5 operators were willing to run an internal operation against their own institutional structure on the basis of evidence that hadn't been officially validated, brought to them by a woman they had met 50 minutes ago. He looked at Ethan first. Ethan nodded once. No hesitation. Lucas was already nodding before Reeves looked at him. Ryan said, "I've been watching her since she walked in. Her reasoning is clean. Her evidence is coherent. I'm in." Aaron looked at Reeves. "You already know what I'm going to say." "Tell me anyway," Reeves said. 7 operators, Aaron said. 3 careers, 12 operations. I don't need more than that. Reeves looked at Maya. "All right," he said. "We run your plan, but we run it my way, inside this facility under my operational control. You direct the intelligence component. I direct the team. Clear." "Clear," she said immediately. "And if this goes sideways—" "It won't," she said. "If it goes sideways," he repeated, not accepting the interruption, "I need to know you have a contingency." Maya reached into her jacket one more time and produced a small USB drive. She set it on the table next to the access log and the incident summary. "Everything I have," she said. "Compiled, annotated, and encrypted. 3 copies exist. 1 is with me. 1 is with a person outside this command who has instructions to deliver it to a specific office if I don't make contact within 48 hours. 1 is on this drive." Reeves looked at the drive. "Who's the outside contact?" "Someone I trust completely," she said. "Someone with no connection to this command or this installation." "Name?" She held his gaze. "With respect, Master Chief, that information stays with me, because the only way that contact is useful is if nobody in this building knows who it is." Reeves held her gaze for 3 seconds. Then he nodded. They moved to the secondary briefing room adjacent to the training bay because the training bay had windows at the upper level and the briefing room had none. Maya noticed that Reeves had made that choice without being asked, and she adjusted her assessment of him upward accordingly. Aaron pulled the evaluation system terminal from the equipment console and set it on the briefing table. He logged in with his credentials, navigated to the performance profile directory, and turned the screen toward Maya. "Show me what you need to modify," he said. Maya sat down at the terminal. She studied the directory structure for 40 seconds. Not the profiles themselves, but the architecture of how they were organized. The file naming conventions, The metadata tags. Who manages this system? She said. Base IT support, Aaron said. With oversight from the evaluation division. Who in the evaluation division? Division Chief Harmon and his Deputy Lieutenant Commander Walsh. Maya typed a command. A new window opened the system access log, visible from the administrative side. She scrolled backward through the timestamps until she found the entry from 2 nights ago. She pointed at the credential code. This account, she said. Do you recognize the format? Aaron leaned in, studied it. It's an evaluation division format, he said slowly. That prefix, that's the evaluation division account structure. Yes, Maya said. But it's not Harmon's code, Aaron said. And it's not Walsh's. No, Maya said. It's not. Then whose? It's formatted like an evaluation division account, Maya said. But it doesn't match any active user in the evaluation division directory. Ethan, standing behind Aaron's shoulder, leaned in. Someone created a fake account with evaluation division formatting. Someone who knew the formatting well enough to replicate it accurately, Maya said. Which means either someone inside the evaluation division or someone with close enough access to the division's administrative structure to study the format over time. Or both, Ryan said from the doorway. Or both, Maya agreed. She navigated to the profile directory, opened the first file, Ethan's profile, read through the data with the focused attention of someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. Your natural left side dominance, she said to Ethan without looking up. It's documented here as your primary initiation tendency. It is, Ethan said. And your recovery speed after a failed approach documented as 2.1 seconds average. About right. If someone read this and used it to plan a counter-operation, she said, they'd know to anticipate your left initiation, and they'd know they had a 2-second window after disrupting your approach before you reset. Ethan was quiet. That's enough, he said. That's enough to compromise a contact sequence. That's enough to get you killed, she said plainly. If the person on the other side knew it, and you didn't know they knew it. She said it without drama, just the fact of it. Ethan looked at his own profile on the screen and said nothing. Maya moved to the modification phase. She worked methodically, changing specific data points in each profile, not randomly, but according to a logic she explained as she went. She adjusted Ethan's documented recovery time from 2.1 seconds to 3.4. She changed Lucas's noted approach preference from direct centerline to angled right. She modified Ryan's documented distance management tendency in a way that would suggest a specific positional preference he didn't actually have. Each modification was designed to produce a predictable operational failure mode. If someone used the modified profiles to plan an ambush or a counter-operation, that operation would leave a distinctive signature, a pattern of decisions that could only be explained by reliance on profile data that was specifically and intentionally wrong. How long does the modification take to become visible in the shared system? Lucas asked. It's already in the shared system, Maya said. The modification syncs automatically. Whoever is watching this directory can see the updated files within minutes of us saving them. So the clock starts now, Ryan said. The clock starts now, she confirmed. She saved the final modification, closed the directory, logged out of the terminal. She sat back in her chair and looked at the team around the table. Now we wait, she said. And while we wait, I need to tell you something about why I'm certain the access is ongoing. Something in her tone shifted. Not dramatically. Not enough that someone who didn't know how to listen would have caught it. But Reeves caught it, and Ryan caught it, and Aaron caught it. She was about to say something she hadn't said yet, something she had been deciding whether to say. Tell us, Reeves said. Maya folded her hands on the table. The access log from 2 nights ago, she said. I showed you 27 lines. Yes, Reeves said. There are 41 lines, she said. I only showed you 27. The room went very still. The other 14 lines, Ethan said carefully. What did they access? Maya looked at him, then at Reeves. They accessed the personal communication records of every person in this room. Nobody moved. Emails, she continued. Internal messages, Logged phone calls made through the base communication system. 14 lines covering all 5 of you, plus 2 support staff in this facility, plus... She paused. Plus me. They know you're here, Aaron said. They know I was on base 2 nights ago, she said. I don't know yet whether they know specifically what I've been doing or who I've been talking to. But they pulled my communication records, which means they identified me as a relevant variable. You're a target, Lucas said. I may be a target, she said, which changes the timeline. How? Reeves said. If they know I'm moving on this, she said, they won't wait for me to find them. They'll accelerate. They'll try to access and use whatever information they have before I can get the evidence to a level where it can't be suppressed. How long do we have? Ryan said. Maya was honest. I don't know. Days. Maybe less. And the contingency on the outside, Reeves said. The 48-hour contact window. If I don't make contact in 48 hours, she said, the information goes up. But that's a last resort. Because if it goes that way, it means something has gone wrong that I didn't anticipate. And by the time the information reaches the right people through that channel, they'll have had time to build a response. You need to close this before they know you're closing it, Ryan said. Yes, she said. With 5 people in a training room and a modified set of performance profiles, Lucas said. And 14 months of documented evidence, she said. And one more thing. She reached into her jacket for the 4th time. This time what she produced was not a document. It was a photograph. Printed on standard paper, small, slightly grainy, the kind of image pulled from a surveillance system and printed quickly. She set it on the table face up. It showed a corridor. A person walking through it, head down, carrying a folder. The image was taken from above and at an angle, so the face wasn't visible. But the uniform was visible. The rank insignia was visible. The badge clipped to the left breast pocket was visible. Aaron looked at it. He looked at it for a long time. Where was this taken? He said. Administrative annex, Maya said. Security camera. The night the ghost terminal was used for the first time 14 months ago. The badge, Aaron said. That's a planning division badge. Yes, Maya said. I can't read the name from this angle. No, she said. Neither could I, at first. She reached into her jacket one final time and set a second photograph next to the first. Same corridor, same angle. A different night, the date stamp in the corner was from 6 weeks ago. Same person, same head-down posture, same folder. But 6 weeks ago, the corridor lighting had been different. And in the second photograph, the badge was angled 2 degrees differently than in the first. 2 degrees. Enough. Ryan leaned over the table and looked at both photographs. He had a sniper's eyes, the kind that had been trained to find detail at distances where most people saw nothing, and he found it in 4 seconds. He straightened up. He looked at Maya. You can read the name, he said. I can read the name, she said. Then why haven't you already taken this to someone? Ethan said. If you have a name, because a name without the operational fingerprint is a photograph of someone walking through a hallway, she said. 14 months ago, taken from a camera that wasn't officially active that night. A photograph that any competent lawyer closes in 20 minutes. I need the fingerprint. I need the access connected to an operational outcome in a way that can't be explained away. She looked at all of them. Which is why I'm here. Which is why the modified profiles matter. Reeves studied her. You've had the name for how long? He said. Maya held his gaze. 3 days. 3 days, he repeated. You've known who it is for 3 days, and you've been sitting on it. I've been building the case around it, she said. Because going with just the name and just the photograph ends the same way the first report ended. Someone closes it. And this time, they know I'm the one who opened it. Reeves was quiet. I thought about what it cost to sit on a name for 3 days. To know who had gotten 7 people killed and walk around with that knowledge and say nothing, do nothing. Wait because doing the thing wrong was worse than doing nothing. He thought about Thomas Carter again. The system protects what it understands. Your job is to protect what the system hasn't seen yet. Thomas Carter had passed that lesson to his daughter. and his daughter had absorbed it completely. "The name," Reeves said. "Tell us the name." Maya looked at him, then at each operator in the room, one at a time, the same methodical scan she had done when she first walked through the door, reading each face, making a final assessment. She had earned this room in 57 seconds. She had held their attention for 2 hours, and now she was about to hand them the most dangerous piece of information any of them had ever been given inside a building they were supposed to be safe in. She said the name. 2 of the 5 operators recognized it immediately. The other 3 recognized it 4 seconds later. And the sound that followed, not a word, not a reaction, but the specific quality of silence that fills a room when 5 trained professionals simultaneously realize that the threat they've been hunting was sitting at a table 12 feet from their training bay every single day for over a year. That silence said everything that none of them had words for. Reeves looked at the photograph. Then he looked at Maya Carter. "How do we start?" he said. She was already reaching for the terminal. "Lieutenant Commander Marcus Walsh, Deputy Chief of the Evaluation Division, 12 years at this installation, the man who signed off on every performance profile that entered the system. The man who had shaken Ethan Cole's hand at his promotion ceremony 4 months ago and told him he'd earned it." Lucas Bennett said it out loud because someone had to. "Walsh eats lunch in our building." "I know," Maya said. "He was at my daughter's christening." She turned and looked at him. Not with pity, with something more useful than pity, with the steady, unflinching attention of someone who understood exactly what she had just done to a man and was not going to soften it into something easier. "I know," she said again. Lucas put both hands on the back of a chair and leaned on it. He didn't say anything else for almost a minute. Ethan was the one who broke it. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure it's him in the photograph," Maya said. "I'm sure the account format matches his division. I'm sure his access credentials were active during 11 of the 12 incident windows. What I'm not sure of is whether he's the origin or the instrument." "Meaning what?" Ethan said. "Meaning a man with 12 years in the same division and a spotless record doesn't wake up one morning and decide to sell operational profiles," she said. "Either he's been compromised, pressured, leveraged, bought, or he's a relay for someone above him. Or he's exactly what he looks like, and he's been doing this for 14 months out of some motivation I haven't identified yet." "You're saying you don't know why," Aaron said. "I'm saying I don't know why, and until I do, I don't know how many other people are attached to him." Ryan had been standing near the wall, silent, arms folded. He spoke without moving. "Then we don't touch him." "No," Maya said. "We don't touch him. We watch him. We watch him, and we let the profiles do the work." Reeves had said nothing since she gave the name. He was still standing over the 2 photographs on the table. Hands flat on either side of them, head down. He had known Marcus Walsh for 6 years. Had argued with him about evaluation protocols. Had defended him once in a staff meeting when someone questioned the pace of his division's paperwork. He straightened. "How long before the modified profiles get pulled?" he said. "If the pattern holds within 72 hours, Maya said. The historical access intervals cluster between 2 and 4 days after a profile update event. He watches the directory. Updated files draw him. And if he doesn't pull them, then he already knows I'm here," she said, "and we have a different problem." He pulled them in 19 hours. Aaron caught it at 0347 the following morning, sitting alone in the briefing room with the administrative log open on the terminal and cold coffee he had stopped drinking 2 hours earlier. The line appeared on the screen, and he stared at it for 4 full seconds before his brain accepted that he wasn't imagining it. He called Reeves. Reeves called the others. By 0420, all 6 of them were in the room, and nobody was talking because the line on the screen was doing all the talking that needed to be done. Access event. Ghost terminal credentials. 5 files pulled. All 5 modified profiles. "He took them," Ethan said. "He took them," Maya confirmed. "That's it. That's the fingerprint." "That's half of it," she said. "He took the data. Now we need the data to show up somewhere." Lucas rubbed his face with both hands. He had slept 90 minutes. "How does it show up? What does that even look like from our end?" It looks like an operation, Maya said. Somewhere in the world, someone is going to plan something using those 5 profiles. And when that operation involves one of you, or when the profile data gets fed into a counter-planning package, it produces the failure signature. Ryan looked up sharply. When it involves one of us, Maya paused. It was the first time in 2 days she had visibly hesitated before answering something. Say it, Reeves said. The profiles are only operationally useful, Maya said carefully, if the operators in question are deployed. Profile data on 5 men sitting in a training facility in San Diego has limited tactical value. The room absorbed that. So for the fingerprint to appear, Aaron said slowly, we have to be somewhere. Yes. You want us deployed. I don't want anything, Maya said. I'm telling you the mechanism. The data becomes actionable when you become reachable. Lucas laughed one short, unamused sound. So the plan is we walk into something with a target painted on us and hope you're watching close enough to catch who's aiming. The plan, Maya said, is that we control the conditions under which you become reachable. We choose the scenario. We choose the parameters. We choose the environment. And we build it so that if anyone acts on that data, the only person who gets hurt is the person who acted. That's a lot of confidence, Lucas said. It's not confidence, she said. It's preparation. There's a difference, and my father spent 19 years teaching me what it is. Reeves took 40 minutes to decide. He took it alone in his office with the door closed, and nobody in the briefing room said a word about what he might be weighing. They all knew. He was weighing 4 men he was responsible for against 7 men who were already dead, and however many would follow if this thing kept breathing inside the building. When he came back, he had a folder in his hand. Joint readiness exercise, he said. 29 palms. Multi-unit tactical evaluation, 4 days live environment. It's been on the calendar for 6 weeks. Aaron sat up. Kirkland's exercise. Kirkland's exercise. We were listed as an observer element. Reeves dropped the folder on the table. I just requested we be reclassified as a participating assault element. Ethan whistled low. That request routes through operational planning, Maya said. It routes through operational planning, Reeves confirmed. It'll cross Walsh's desk within 8 hours. You just told him where we're going to be, Lucas said. I just told him exactly where we're going to be, Reeves said. Which was the point. Maya was already reaching for a notepad. How many personnel in the exercise total? Roughly 200, 6 units. Multiple observer elements and opposing force detachment evaluation staff. Opposing force, she said. Her pen stopped. Who provides the opposing force? Reeves looked at her. Contract element, he said. Civilian tactical contractors. Standard for exercises this size. Maya set the pen down. Which contractor? She said. The answer took Aaron 6 hours to find, because the contracting information wasn't in the exercise packet, and when he finally located it, it was buried in a procurement addendum that had been filed under a different exercise number. The contractor was a company called Meridian Tactical Solutions. Maya ran the name for 11 minutes and then stopped. Sat back and stared at the screen without saying anything for so long that Ryan crossed the room to look over her shoulder. What? He said. Meridian's operations director, she said. Retired Navy, left the service 4 years ago. So, he left after a joint task force assignment, she said. Operational planning and coordination, this command. Ryan read the name on the screen. He read it twice. Then he said quietly, Colonel Robert Keane. Reeves was across the room in 3 steps. He looked at the screen, and something in his face closed down completely, the way a door closes in a house where someone has just heard a sound they recognize. Keane was Walsh's supervisor, he said, for 4 years. Yes, Maya said. He wrote Walsh's fitness reports. Yes. He recommended him for the deputy position. Yes, she said. And when he retired, he took a contract job at a company that provides opposing force elements to military training exercises. Which means for the last 4 years, he has had a legitimate professional reason to know how American Special Operations personnel move, think, and react under pressure. Ethan was standing very still. "That's not a leak," he said. "That's a business model." Nobody argued with him, because he was right, and everyone in the room understood it at the same moment, and the understanding was so much worse than what any of them had been imagining, that for a few seconds none of them could speak. It wasn't espionage. It wasn't a foreign service running an asset inside American Special Operations. It was a man who had spent his career learning how the system worked, retired, and then monetized the one asset he had that nobody could take from him. Access through a former subordinate he had personally elevated into position. "Who does he sell to?" Lucas said. Maya didn't look away from the screen. "Meridian has training and consulting contracts with 11 foreign clients. 4 of them are in regions where 5 of the 12 incidents occurred." Lucas closed his eyes. "He's not selling to enemies," Aaron said. "He's selling to clients, legitimate clients, who then have relationships of their own," Maya said. "Which means the profile data doesn't go from Keene to a battlefield in a straight line. It goes from Keene to a client, to a partner, to whoever the partner does business with. 4 steps. Deniable at every one." "That's why nobody caught it," Ryan said. "That's why nobody caught it," she agreed. "There's no espionage signature, no foreign contact, no money moving in suspicious patterns. Just a retired officer running a legitimate company with legitimate contracts, doing what everyone in this business does when they retire." Reeves put his hand on the back of a chair. "Except he's using an active account inside a system he no longer has any right to touch," he said. "Except that," Maya said. She stopped sleeping properly after that. She wouldn't have admitted it if anyone had asked, and nobody asked, but Ryan noticed. Ryan noticed everything. He noticed that she had been in the briefing room at Bo 500 2 mornings running. He noticed that she ate standing up. He noticed that she had stopped taking notes by hand and switched to memorizing, which was what people did when they stopped trusting the physical existence of paper. On the 3rd morning, he brought her coffee and sat down across from her without being invited. "You're carrying this like it's yours," he said. Maya looked up. "It is mine." 7 men died. That's not yours. "I wrote the assessments," she said. "Every one of the 12. My name is on all of them. My analysis went into the planning package that got compromised. My work is what they used to build the operations that people walked into. Your work was correct. My work was correct, and 7 people died anyway," she said. "Do you understand what that does to a person who spent her whole life being told that if you're careful enough and thorough enough and disciplined enough, you can prevent things?" Ryan didn't answer immediately. "Your father tell you that?" he said finally. "My father told me the opposite," Maya said. "My father told me you can't prevent everything. He told me the only thing you control is whether you were honest about what you saw." She wrapped both hands around the coffee. "I didn't believe him. I thought he was making excuses for the ones he lost. And now? Now I've lost 7, and I understand exactly what he meant," she said. "And he's not here for me to tell him." Ryan went quiet. "When did he die?" he said. 14 months ago, Maya said. The number hit Ryan like a hand on the chest. He looked at her. She was looking at the coffee. 14 months, he said. "I noticed it too," she said. "That's not..." He stopped, started again. "Maya, that's not a coincidence. I've considered that it might not be," she said. "I've considered it every single day for 3 weeks, and I've made a decision that I'm going to keep considering it, and I'm not going to act on it. Because the moment I start treating this as personal, I stop being useful. And right now, useful is the only thing I have." Ryan sat back. He had met a lot of people in his career who could compartmentalize. He had met almost nobody who could do it out loud in front of someone with that much honesty about the cost. "For what it's worth," he said, "I'd have acted on it." "I know," Maya said. "That's why I told you and not Reeves." 29. Palms was 4 days out. Aaron built the monitoring architecture. Ethan and Lucas ran the physical preparation. Ryan handled the exercise scenario documentation, mapping every element of the planned engagement against what the modified profiles would predict. And on the second night at 22:10 hours, The ghost terminal accessed the system again. Aaron saw it live. He didn't call anyone. He watched. For 6 minutes. Whoever was on the other end of that terminal moved through the evaluation directory, and Aaron sat in a dark briefing room and watched every keystroke render as a log entry on his screen. Profile access. Profile access. Directory listing. Profile access. Then something new. A search query. Aaron leaned forward. The query string appeared in the log with a 2-second delay, Carter M. His stomach dropped. He called Maya first. Not Reeves. Maya. She picked up on the second ring. He's searching for you, Aaron said. Silence on the line for 1 second. What directory? She said. Personnel. He's running your name against the base personnel access records. Will he find me? You badged in through the main gate on Tuesday, Aaron said. You're in the visitor log. Then he'll find me, she said. Calm. Completely calm. What else is he touching? He just pulled the exercise participation roster. Am I on it? Aaron scrolled. Read. Read again. You're on it, he said. Reeves added you as an intelligence observer 40 hours ago. Then he knows, Maya said. He knows I'm here. He knows I'm going to 29 Palms, and he knows I've been inside this facility for 4 days. Do we abort? No. Maya. No, she said. Aaron, listen to me. If we abort now, he burns the ghost terminal. Keen cleans the Meridian records, and everything I have becomes a photograph of a hallway. We lose him. And in 8 months, there's a 13th incident, and someone else's team walks into it. Aaron closed his eyes. Then what do? He said. We change one thing, Maya said. We stop trying to be invisible, and we start being predictable. He's watching us. Fine. Let him watch. Let him build his plan around exactly what he sees. Because what he sees is wrong. Because what he sees is what we put there, she said. Reeves didn't like it. He said so at 0600 the next morning in front of the whole team, without diplomatic softening. You're proposing we walk into a live exercise where the opposing force is run by the man selling our profiles, he said. Knowing he knows we're coming. Knowing he knows who you are. Yes, Maya said. Give me the operational logic, not the theory, the logic. The logic is that Keen's advantage has always been that his targets didn't know he existed, Maya said. Every one of those 12 incidents, the operators on the ground had no idea their movement patterns had been sold. They were reacting to what they thought was an adaptive enemy. They never knew they were reacting to themselves. And now we know. And more importantly, the profiles he's holding are wrong, and he doesn't know they're wrong. So for the first time in 14 months, the information advantage runs the other way. She looked at each of them. He's going to build an opposing force plan around 5 operators who don't exist. And when his plan collapses in a way that has no other possible explanation, that collapse gets documented by 200 people and an official exercise evaluation staff. Not by me. By the Marine Corps. Reeves was quiet. That's the fingerprint, he said slowly. Not a log entry. An official after-action report. An official after-action report, Maya said, from an exercise with 200 witnesses documenting an opposing force element that demonstrated impossible foreknowledge of specific American operators' tactical tendencies. Foreknowledge that was demonstrably false in 5 identifiable ways that correspond exactly to 5 modifications made to classified performance profiles on a specific date. Lucas sat forward. That can't be closed in 48 hours. That can't be closed at all, Maya said. Ethan started laughing. Genuinely laughing for the first time in 4 days. She's not setting a trap for him, he said, looking around the room. She's making him set it for himself and then handing the receipt to the Marine Corps. Yes, Maya said. Reeves looked at the folder on the table. Then he looked at her. Thomas Carter's daughter, 27 years old, 4 days without proper sleep, carrying 7 dead men she'd never met, and a father she'd buried 14 months ago, standing in his briefing room proposing something that shouldn't have been possible. All right, he said. We go. They rolled out at 0430 on Thursday. And at 0447, 17 minutes into the drive, Aaron's phone buzzed with an alert from the monitoring system he had left running. He read it. He read it again. Then he turned around in his seat and said, "Master Chief, the ghost terminal just went dark." Reeves looked at him in the mirror. "Dark how?" "Deleted," Aaron said. "Not deactivated, deleted. The entire virtual access point is gone from the network as of 4 minutes ago. 14 months of infrastructure erased." Maya's head came up. "Say that again," she said. "It's gone," Aaron said. "Every trace of it. He wiped it." Nobody spoke, because all of them understood what it meant at the same time, and the understanding was cold and simple and absolutely terrible. The ghost terminal had been the evidence. The access log, the timestamps, the 14-month pattern, the credential trail, all of it existed inside that architecture. Maya had copies. Maya had printouts and encrypted drives and a contact on the outside. But copies weren't the same as a live verifiable system record, and every defense attorney in America knew it. Walsh had just burned the only thing that connected the paper in Maya's jacket to the machine that produced it. Which meant one of two things. Either he was running, or he already had everything he needed. Ryan said it first quietly from the back. "He's not running." Maya was staring straight ahead. "No," she said. "He's not." "Then why wipe it now?" "Because he doesn't need it anymore," she said. "He pulled the profiles. He gave them to Keene. Keene has already built the opposing force plan for this exercise." She turned and looked at Ryan. "He wiped the terminal because the operation is already live, and there's nothing left to collect." Lucas leaned forward. "So the plan still works. He still used the bad profiles. The collapse still happens." "The collapse still happens," Maya said slowly. "Then why do you look like that?" Maya didn't answer for a long moment. "Because there's a third possibility," she said. Reeves met her eyes in the mirror. "He wiped it," she said, "because he knew we'd see him wipe it." The vehicle went silent. "He wanted us to know," Ethan said. "I wanted us to know at exactly this moment," Maya said. 17 minutes out, committed, moving, too far to turn around without aborting the entire exercise and explaining to a 2-star general why a SEAL evaluation element withdrew from a joint readiness operation at the last minute. "That's psychological," Aaron said. "That's a man who has spent 14 months studying how operators react under pressure," Maya said, "using the one profile he does have accurate data on." Lucas said, "Whose?" Maya looked out the window. "Mine," she said. Nobody spoke for a full minute after she said it. Then Lucas turned in his seat and looked at her directly. "Explain that. Because if you're telling me that man has a psychological profile on you, I need to hear how." "He has 14 months of my analytical work," Maya said. "Every assessment I wrote, every source evaluation, every recommendation I made, and every one I refused to make." She kept her eyes on the window. "You don't need a personality file to read someone. You need their decisions. He's been reading mine since before I knew he existed." "What does that tell him?" "That I don't abort," she said. "That when I commit to a course of action I finish it. That I've never once in 14 months recommended withdrawal from an operation that had already launched." She finally turned and looked at Lucas. "He knows I'll keep driving. He wiped the terminal because he wanted me to spend the next 2 hours knowing I lost my evidence and driving toward him anyway." Ethan swore under his breath. "That's not tactics," he said. "That's cruelty." "It's both," Maya said. "It usually is." Reeves pulled the vehicle to the shoulder. He did it without warning and without explanation, and for 10 seconds nobody asked why. He put it in park, killed the engine, and turned around in his seat so he could see all 5 of them. "Everybody stop," he said. They stopped. "Here's what I'm not going to do," Reeves said. "I'm not going to let a man who's never met any of us dictate the emotional temperature of this team 90 miles from an objective." He wiped a terminal. "Fine." He got in Carter's head. "Fine. That's the entirety of what he's accomplished in the last 20 minutes. He looked at Maya. "Captain, assessment. Not feelings. Assessment." Maya took a breath. Then she gave it to him clean. Nothing operationally has changed, she said. He pulled the modified profiles 19 hours after we planted them. That access is documented in Aaron's local capture, which exists independently of the network architecture he deleted. Keene has already built the opposing force plan. The plan is built on data that is wrong in 5 specific identifiable ways. Those 5 errors will manifest during the exercise in front of 200 witnesses and an official evaluation staff. She sat straighter. The evidentiary chain we designed does not depend on the ghost terminal. It never did. The terminal was how we found him. It was never how we were going to prove him. Reeves watched her. So what did he actually destroy? He said. My ability to prove 14 months of prior access, Maya said. The 12 incidents, the 7 dead. That's what he took off the table. Silence. He protected the past, Ryan said quietly. He didn't protect the next 4 days. He couldn't, Maya said. The next 4 days already happened. He gave Keene the profiles a week ago. Aaron let out a breath he had clearly been holding since Ontario. So we're still good. We're still good, Maya said. We're just angrier. Reeves started the engine. Then let's be angry at the objective, he said, instead of in my vehicle. They arrived at 11:40. The joint readiness exercise was already assembling 6 units, 200 personnel and evaluation staff, pulled from 3 commands. The SEAL element checked in as a participating assault detachment, and Maya checked in as an intelligence observer, and nobody looked at either entry twice, because both were routine, and both were exactly what the paperwork said. At 13:15, Reeves found Colonel Ann Kirkland in the exercise control cell. Kirkland ran the exercise. She was 54 Marine Corps and had been doing this long enough that she could tell within 4 seconds of a conversation starting whether someone was there to make her day easier or harder. Master Chief, she said, you reclassified yourselves as participants 6 days out. I'd like to hear why. Because I need my team measured against a live opposing force, ma'am. That's the answer that fits on a form, Kirkland said. Give me the other one. Reeves considered lying. He decided in about a second and a half not to. Ma'am, I'd like to request 10 minutes in a room with no windows, he said. Kirkland looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, bring the analyst. It took Maya 18 minutes. She laid it out the way she had laid it out in the briefing room in San Diego Architecture: First Evidence, Second Conclusion Last. The 12 incidents. The access pattern. Walsh. Keene. Meridian. The modified profiles. The 5 deliberate errors. Kirkland did not interrupt once. When Maya finished, Kirkland sat back and folded her arms and said absolutely nothing for 11 seconds. Then she said, you modified classified performance profiles inside a Navy evaluation system without authorization. Yes, ma'am. That's a crime. Yes, ma'am. You understand that if you're wrong about any part of this, your career ends in a room with lawyers in it. Yes, ma'am. Kirkland turned to Reeves. And you signed off on it. I did, ma'am. Why? Reeves didn't hesitate. Because I've buried people from 2 of those 12 operations, and I've spent 4 years being told they died from bad intelligence, and I sat in a briefing room 5 days ago and watched a 27-year-old analyst prove to me that the intelligence was fine, and the system was the thing that killed them. Kirkland was quiet. Give me one thing I can verify right now, she said. Not later. Now. Maya was ready for that. Ma'am, the opposing force plan for this exercise was submitted to your control cell for approval. Standard procedure. You have it. I have it. May I see it? Kirkland pulled the folder from her desk and slid it across without a word. Maya opened it. She read for 90 seconds. Then she stopped, put her finger on a line and turned the folder around. Ma'am, opposing force disposition phase 2. They've allocated a 4-man interdiction element to the eastern approach and left the center corridor with a 2-man screen. So there's no tactical reason to weight the eastern approach that heavily. The terrain doesn't favor it, the objective doesn't require it, and no competent planner would do it unless he believed that Petty Officer Bennett's documented approach preference was angled right rather than direct centerline. Kirkland looked at the page. "And is it?" "No, ma'am," Maya said. "Bennett is direct centerline, always has been. It's in his real profile, and it's been in his real profile for 9 years." She looked up. "The modification I made 4 days ago changed it to angled right. That opposing force plan was built on a data point that has existed for exactly 96 hours inside a classified Navy system, and Colonel Robert Keene has never had lawful access to it." Kirkland didn't move. Then she reached over and picked up her desk phone. "Get me the exercise evaluation lead," she said, "and find out who signed the Meridian contract." The exercise began at 0500 Friday. Maya was in the control cell with Kirkland watching the feed from 12 observation positions and 11 body-worn evaluation cameras, and for the first 90 minutes, nothing happened that wasn't ordinary. Then Phase 2 started, and Lucas Bennett walked straight down the center corridor with a 2-man screen in front of him, and 4 opposing force operators sitting uselessly on the eastern approach 800 meters away, waiting for a man who was never coming. Kirkland watched it happen. She said very quietly, "Well, I'll be damned." "That's one," Maya said. 20 minutes later. Ethan Cole executed a failed approach on a strongpoint, took a simulated disruption hit and reset in 2.1 seconds, while an opposing force element that had been holding for a 3.4-second window found him already inside their position and behind their lead man. "That's 2, Maya said. At 0812, an opposing force team attempted to bracket Ryan Mitchell at a distance that assumed a positional preference he did not have and had never had, and Ryan was 400 meters from where they expected him watching them do it." 3. By 1100, Kirkland had stopped saying anything at all. By 1340, the exercise evaluation lead, a Marine major named Ruiz, who had run 40-some of these and had never once filed an anomaly report, mid-exercise, walked into the control cell holding a tablet and said, "Ma'am, I need to flag something about the op for planning." "Sit down, Major," Kirkland said. "You're the 4th person today." It came apart for Keene at 1520. Not because of anything Maya did. Because of what he did. Somewhere in the opposing force command element. A man who had spent 4 years selling foreknowledge and 14 months believing. He was invisible, watched his 4th carefully constructed engagement collapse in the same inexplicable way. And he made the single mistake that people in his position always eventually make. He tried to correct. He pulled his opposing force back, reorganized, and issued a revised plan at 1530 that abandoned every assumption from the original, because the original assumptions were producing nothing, and a man with a legitimate opposing force plan would have adapted gradually. But a man who knew his cheat sheet was wrong abandoned it all at once. Ruiz caught it in the after-action data at 1610. "Ma'am, this is not adaptation," he said. "This is a total planning reset in a single cycle. I've never seen an OPFOR element throw out its entire scheme of maneuver mid-exercise. They didn't adjust. They panicked." Kirkland looked at Maya. Maya was looking at the screen with an expression that was not triumph. "He knows," she said. "Knows what? That the data was bad." Maya turned. "Ma'am, he doesn't know we planted it. Not yet. Right now he thinks Walsh gave him garbage, which means in the next few hours he's going to contact Walsh and ask him why." Kirkland understood immediately. "And Walsh is going to check the system," she said. "Walsh is going to check the system and find out that the profiles were modified 4 days ago by a credential belonging to Aaron Walker at an evaluation terminal in San Diego," Maya said. "And then he's going to know exactly what happened to him." "How long?" "Hours," Maya said. "Maybe less." Kirkland stood up. "Then we're done being quiet," she said. Walsh checked the system at 1804. Aaron caught it live from the control cell because Aaron had never stopped watching, and he read the access sequence out loud as it happened. "He's in the evaluation directory. He's pulling modification history. Aaron stopped. "He's got it." "How long was he in?" Kirkland said. 40 seconds. "And now?" "Gone." Kirkland picked up the phone again. This time she called NCIS. But Maya was already thinking 2 steps past it. "Ma'am," she said, "he's not going to run either." "Why not?" "Because running is a confession, and Walsh has spent 12 years in this system. He knows exactly how an investigation works, and he knows what evidence exists and what doesn't." She was speaking fast now. "He deleted the ghost terminal. My live records are gone. What's left is a modification log showing that Aaron Walker altered classified profiles without authorization, an exercise where a contractor's plan failed, and a photograph of a hallway." Reeves had come into the control cell 4 minutes earlier and heard the last half of it. "He's going to flip it," he said. "He's going to flip it," Maya said. "He's going to file a security incident report against us. Unauthorized modification of classified evaluation records by a SEAL element and an intelligence officer with no jurisdiction coordinated to sabotage a live joint exercise and discredit a contractor." Kirkland set the phone down slowly. "That report would be accurate," she said. "Every word of it," Maya said. The report was filed at 1922. They knew because Kirkland's own inbox received it as an information copy flagged priority, routed through operational planning and coordination. Walsh's division, with a recommendation for immediate suspension of clearance for all 6 personnel involved. Ethan read it over Kirkland's shoulder and laughed with absolutely no humor in it. "He's fast," he said. "He's had 12 years to think about how he'd do this," Maya said. Lucas was pacing. "So what do we have, honestly? What's actually left?" Nobody answered. Because the truthful answer was a Marine colonel's judgment, an anomalous after-action report, and one very thin thread that connected Robert Keane to a data point that had only existed for 4 days. Thin was not the same as nothing, but it was thin. Maya sat down at the control cell terminal and pulled up the Meridian contract file. She read for 6 minutes without speaking. Then she said, "Ma'am, who signed the Meridian contract for this exercise?" Kirkland checked. "Contracting officer at Marine Corps Installations West." "And who submitted the technical requirements package that specified Meridian as the qualified vendor?" Kirkland went further into the file. Her expression changed. "Operational planning and coordination," she said. "Naval Special Warfare." Maya sat back. "Walsh's division wrote the requirements that made Keane's company the only qualified bidder," she said. "That's procurement fraud," Kirkland said. "That's procurement fraud," Maya agreed. "Which is a financial crime, which means it leaves a financial record, which means it exists in a system that Lieutenant Commander Walsh does not have the access to delete." Nobody said anything for a second. Then Ryan said from across the room, "He protected the intelligence trail." "He protected the intelligence trail," Maya said. "He never thought about the money." She spent the next 11 hours with a contracting specialist. Kirkland woke up at 21:30, and a JAG officer. Kirkland woke up at 21:45. By 0900 Saturday, they had 8 contract awards over 4 years. 4 of them with technical requirements, packages, authored by the Operational Planning Division, under Walsh's signature, all 4 specifying vendor qualifications that only Meridian Tactical Solutions could satisfy. Total value, $19.4 million. The JAG officer, a lieutenant commander named Priya Raghavan, who had been awake for 13 hours and looked like she had discovered a reason to enjoy her career again, put both hands flat on the table. "This is clean," she said. "This is very clean. Procurement fraud with a documented paper trail through named signatories. This goes to a U.S. attorney." "It's not the crime," Maya said. "No," Raghavan said. "It's not the crime. The crime is 7 dead operators, and I cannot prove that in a courtroom with what you have. But this," she tapped the contract file. "This puts Walsh and Keane in an interview room under subpoena, and once they're in that room, they start talking about each other. That's how these things actually end. Not with the big thing. With the small thing that's provable." Lucas, who had been listening from the doorway, said, "That's it. That's the ending. 19 million in contracts." Raghavan looked at him. "Petty officer," she said. "Al Capone went down for taxes." They arrested Robert Keane on Monday at 10:30 at Meridian's office in Coronado, on a federal warrant for procurement fraud and unauthorized access to a government computer system. He did not resist. He did not appear surprised. He asked for a lawyer in the first 11 seconds. Marcus Walsh was detained at 1042 at Naval Base San Diego, in the building where he had worked for 12 years in front of 43 people in his division. He did not ask for a lawyer. That was the thing that surprised everyone. He sat down in an interview room with NCIS and Raghavan and a U.S. Attorney's investigator, and at 13:38 he began talking, and he did not stop for 6 hours. Maya wasn't in the room. She was 2 doors down, watching a video feed, sitting completely still, with her hands folded in her lap, and Ryan Mitchell sat next to her the entire time and never once said a word. Walsh talked about the contracts. He talked about the technical requirements packages. He talked about the ghost terminal, which he had built in 2023, and which he described without any apparent awareness of how it sounded as an efficiency solution. At 16:10, an investigator asked him about the profiles. Walsh said he had provided them to Meridian for training realism enhancement. At 16:22, the investigator asked whether he understood that operational profile data provided to Meridian had appeared in engagements that killed American servicemen. Walsh said nothing for 41 seconds. Then he said, "I wasn't told what they did with it." Maya stood up and left the room. Ryan found her in the corridor 2 minutes later, standing with her back against the wall and her eyes closed. "He wasn't told," she said. "I heard. 7 people." She opened her eyes. 7 people, and his defense is that he didn't ask. Ryan didn't try to fix it. That was the thing she would remember about him afterward, that he didn't try to fix it. "Yeah," he said. "That's usually what it is." At 19:47, the investigator asked Marcus Walsh one more question. It wasn't on the list. It came from Raghavan, who had been reading Maya's incident summary during a break, and had noticed something that had been sitting in the document for 4 days, without anyone connecting it. "Commander Walsh," she said, "in June of last year, did your division process a records request regarding a retired instructor named Thomas Carter?" Behind the glass. Maya Carter stopped breathing. Walsh looked at the table. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "That wasn't me." "Who was it?" "I don't know." "Commander, I don't know," Walsh said, and for the first time in 6 hours, his voice cracked. "It came down through the terminal. It wasn't a request. It was a query. Somebody used the access I built to look up a man who'd been retired for 11 years, and I never asked why, because I never asked anything. That was the whole—" He stopped. "That was the whole arrangement." Raghavan leaned forward. "When?" "June 14th, Walsh said. Maya put her hand flat on the glass. "Because Thomas Carter had died on June 19th. Lên kế hoạch mở rộng phần phổ với tâm lý sâu sắc và hội thoại phong phú. Lên kế hoạch mở rộng phần phổ với tâm lý sâu sắc và hội thoại phong phú." Nobody spoke for a full minute after she said it. Then Lucas turned around in his seat and looked straight at her. "Explain that. Because if you're telling me that man has a psychological profile on you, I need to hear how he got it." "He didn't get it," Maya said. "He built it." "From what?" "From 14 months of my work." She was still looking out the window, but her voice had that flat level quality it got when she was being precise about something that cost her. "Every assessment I wrote crossed his desk. Every source evaluation. Every recommendation I made, and more importantly, every recommendation I refused to make. You don't need a personality file to read someone, Lucas. You need their decisions under pressure. He's had mine for over a year. And what do they say about you? That I don't abort." She turned and looked at him. "In 14 months, I have never once recommended withdrawal from an operation that had already launched. Not once. Even when the situation degraded. Even when I had the standing to do it, and the argument to support it. He knows that about me the way you know a man's dominant hand." Ethan swore quietly. "So he wiped the terminal knowing you'd keep driving." "He wiped the terminal because I'd keep driving," Maya said. "He wanted me to spend the next 2 hours knowing I'd lost my evidence and moving toward him anyway. That's not sabotage, that's pressure. He's testing whether I break under it." "That's not tactics," Ethan said. "That's cruelty." "It's both," Maya said. "In this business, it usually is." Reeves pulled the vehicle onto the shoulder. He did it without signaling, and without a word of explanation, and for a solid 10 seconds, nobody asked. He put it in park, killed the engine unbuckled, and turned all the way around so he could see every face in the vehicle. "Everybody stop," he said. They stopped. "I want to say one thing before this goes any further, and then I want an assessment. Not feelings. Assessment." He looked at each of them in turn. "In the last 20 minutes, a man we've never met, who is not physically present, who has no visibility on this vehicle, or anyone inside it, has managed to change the emotional temperature of this entire team. That is the sum total of what he has accomplished." He pressed a delete key. "That's it. That's the whole operation." Nobody argued. "Captain Carter," Reeves said. "Assessment." Maya took one breath and gave it to him clean in the order she had learned to give things, when the person receiving them needed structure more than reassurance. "Nothing operationally has changed," she said. "He pulled the modified profiles 19 hours after we planted them. That access event is documented in Aaron's local capture, which lives on a machine in our facility, and exists entirely independently of the network architecture he just deleted. Keene already has the profiles. Keene has already built the opposing force plan for this exercise. That plan was submitted for approval 6 days ago, which means it was written before any of this happened. The plan is built on data that is wrong in 5 specific and identifiable ways. Those 5 errors will express themselves during the exercise in front of 200 personnel and an official evaluation staff, and they will be documented by people who have no idea we exist." She sat straighter. "The evidentiary chain we designed never ran through the ghost terminal. The terminal is how we found him. It was never how we were going to prove him." Reeves held her eyes. "Then what did he actually destroy?" Maya paused. She didn't want to answer that, and everyone in the vehicle could tell she didn't want to answer it, and she answered it anyway. "My ability to prove 14 months of prior access," she said. "Which means the 12 incidents. Which means the 7 dead operators. That's what he took off the table." The silence that followed was different from the one before it. "He protected the past," Ryan said from the back. "He protected the past," Maya said. "He couldn't protect the next 4 days. The next 4 days were already written." Lucas exhaled hard through his nose. "So we can still hang him. We just can't hang him for the thing that actually matters." "Not today," Maya said. "Then when?" "When someone else's evidence catches up to mine," she said. "That's how these things work, Lucas. You don't get to close the file the way you want to close it. You close the part you can close, and you make sure the man is in a room with federal investigators when you do it. Because men in rooms with federal investigators eventually start talking about the other men." Reeves turned back around and started the engine. "Then let's put him in the room," he said. They rolled into 29 Palms at 11:40. The exercise was already assembling 6 units, roughly 200 personnel. An evaluation staff pulled from 3 separate commands and a civilian opposing force detachment that had checked in the previous evening and was quartered on the far side of the range complex. The SEAL element checked in as a participating assault detachment. Maya checked in as an intelligence observer. Neither entry drew a second glance because both were routine and both were exactly what the paperwork said they were. At 12:50, Aaron ran a systems check on the local capture and confirmed it was intact. He came back to the team with the tablet in his hand and a look on his face that Reeves read immediately. "Say it," Reeves said. "The capture's clean," Aaron said. 19-hour access event credential string, 5 file identifiers timestamp. All of it. It's solid. But it's a screen recording made by a guy on a laptop in a briefing room," Aaron said. "It's not a forensic image. Any competent defense would argue it's fabricated." "Then it's not evidence," Lucas said. "It's a home video." "It's corroboration," Maya said. "It's not the load-bearing element. It never was." "Then what is?" Maya looked past him toward the exercise control cell. "Her," she said. Colonel Ann Kirkland was 54 years old. Marine Corps, and had been running joint readiness exercises for 11 years. She had the kind of reputation that preceded a person into a room, not feared exactly, but accounted for. She could tell within 4 seconds of a conversation starting whether the person in front of her intended to make her day simpler or more complicated. Reeves walked in at 13:15. "Master Chief," she said before he'd finished crossing the room. "You reclassified your element from observer to participant 6 days out from execution. I'd like to hear why." "Because I need my team measured against a live opposing force, ma'am." "That's the answer that fits on the form," Kirkland said. "Give me the other one." Reeves considered lying. He considered it for about a second and a half, and then he considered what a lie would cost him if this went the way it was probably going to go, and he decided that Anne Kirkland was not a woman you got to lie to twice. Ma'am, he said, "I'd like 10 minutes in a room with no windows." Kirkland studied him. "Bring the analyst," she said. It took Maya 18 minutes. She built it the way she had built it in the briefing room in San Diego. Architecture: first evidence, second conclusion, last no, editorializing anywhere. 12 operational anomalies over 14 months. The access pattern, the ghost terminal. Walsh, Keene, Meridian Tactical Solutions, the modified profiles, and the 5 deliberate errors sitting inside them like tracer rounds. Kirkland did not interrupt once. When Maya finished, the colonel sat back, folded her arms, and said nothing at all for 11 seconds. Then, "You modified classified performance profiles inside a Navy evaluation system without authorization." "Yes, ma'am." "That's a crime." "Yes, ma'am." "You understand that if you're wrong about any single component of this, your career ends in a room full of attorneys and none of them are working for you?" "Yes, ma'am." Kirkland turned her head. "Master Chief, you signed off on this." "I did, ma'am." "Why?" Reeves did not hesitate. "Because I've buried men from 2 of those 12 operations," he said. "I've spent 4 years being told they died because the intelligence was bad. And 5 days ago I sat in my own briefing room and watched a 27-year-old analyst prove to me that the intelligence was never bad. The system killed them. And then the system closed the investigation in 48 hours. Kirkland was quiet for a moment. "Give me one thing," she said. "One thing I can verify right now. Not tomorrow. Now." Maya had been waiting for that question since she walked into the room. "Ma'am, the opposing force scheme of maneuver for this exercise was submitted to your control cell for approval. That's standard procedure. You have it." "I have it." "May I see it?" Kirkland pulled the folder from her desk drawer and slid it across the table without a word. Maya opened it and read for 90 seconds. No notes, no pen, nothing but her eyes moving. Then she stopped, put one finger on a line, and turned the folder around. Phase 2. Opposing force disposition. They've allocated a 4-man interdiction element to the eastern approach and left the center corridor covered by a 2-man screen. So there is no tactical justification for weighting the eastern approach that heavily, Maya said. The terrain doesn't favor it. The objective doesn't require it. No competent planner does that unless he believes that Petty Officer Bennett's documented approach preference is angled right rather than direct centerline. Kirkland looked at the page for a long moment. "And is it?" "No, ma'am. Bennett is direct centerline. He's been direct centerline for 9 years. It's in his real profile, and it's been in his real profile since 2017. Maya looked up. "The modification I made 4 days ago changed that field to angled right. That opposing force plan was built around a data point that has existed anywhere in the world for exactly 96 hours inside a classified Navy evaluation system, and Colonel Robert Keene has never in his life had lawful access to it." Nobody moved. Then Kirkland reached over and picked up her desk phone. "Get me the exercise evaluation lead," she said, "and find out who signed the Meridian contract." The exercise stepped off at 0500 Friday. Maya spent it in the control cell with Kirkland, watching the feed from 12 observation positions and 11 body-worn evaluation cameras. And for the first 90 minutes, absolutely nothing happened that wasn't ordinary. Then Phase 2. Lucas Bennett came down the center corridor, exactly the way Lucas Bennett had come down every center corridor of his adult life, direct, fast, unglamorous, with a two-man opposing force screen in front of him, and four opposing force operators, sitting 800 meters east on high ground, waiting with disciplined patience for a man who was never going to arrive. Kirkland watched him roll through it. "Well," she said quietly, "I'll be damned." "That's one," Maya said. 22 minutes later, Ethan Cole took a simulated disruption hit on a failed strongpoint approach and reset in 2.1 seconds, while an opposing force element that had rehearsed a 3.4-second exploitation window turned around to find him already inside their position and behind their lead man. That's two. At 0812, an opposing force team attempted to bracket Ryan Mitchell at a distance calculated from a positional preference he had never had in his career. Ryan was 400 meters from where they expected him, watching them do it through glass, and Maya saw the moment on his body camera when he understood exactly what he was looking at: a group of professionals executing a good plan built on a lie. "3," she said. By 1100, Kirkland had stopped commenting. By 1340, the exercise evaluation lead, a Marine major named Ruiz, who had run somewhere north of 40 of these and had never once filed an anomaly report, mid-execution, walked into the control cell holding a tablet in both hands, like it might be hot. "Ma'am, I need to flag something about the opposing force planning." "Sit down, Major," Kirkland said. "You're the fourth person today." It came apart for Robert Keane at 1520. Not because of anything Maya did. Because of what he did. Somewhere in the opposing force command element, a man who had spent 4 years selling foreknowledge and 14 months believing himself invisible, watched his fourth carefully constructed engagement dissolve for reasons he could not explain, and he made the single mistake that men in his position always eventually make. He tried to correct. He pulled his opposing force back, reorganized the entire detachment, and pushed out a revised scheme of maneuver at 1530 that abandoned every assumption in the original document, because a planner working from honest analysis adapts incrementally, one element at a time, testing as he goes. A man who knows his cheat sheet is wrong throws the whole thing away at once. Ruiz caught it in the data at 1610. "Ma'am, this isn't adaptation," he said. "This is a total planning reset inside a single cycle. In 11 years, I've never seen an OPFOR element discard its entire scheme of maneuver mid-exercise. They didn't adjust. They panicked. Something they were relying on stopped being true, and they knew it in real time." Kirkland turned and looked at Maya. Maya was watching the screen, and there was nothing like triumph on her face. "He knows," she said. "Knows what? That the data was bad." Maya turned around. "Ma'am, he doesn't know we planted it. Not yet. Right now, he thinks Walsh handed him garbage, which means within the next few hours, he is going to contact Walsh and ask him why." Kirkland understood instantly. "And Walsh is going to check the system. Walsh is going to check the system, pull the modification history, and find out that the profiles were altered 4 days ago by a credential belonging to Aaron Walker at an evaluation terminal in San Diego," Maya said. "And in that moment, he'll know exactly what was done to him and by whom." "How long do we have?" "Hours," Maya said. "Possibly less." Kirkland stood up. "Then we're finished being quiet," she said. Walsh checked the system at 1804. Aaron caught it live because Aaron had never stopped watching 31 hours awake at that point, running on a diet of vending machine coffee and something harder to name, and he narrated the access sequence out loud as it rendered. "He's in the evaluation directory. He's pulling modification history. He's—" Aaron stopped. "He's got it. He's looking at my credential string." "How long was he in?" Kirkland said. 40 seconds. "And now, gone, logged out clean." Kirkland picked up the phone again. This time she called NCIS, but Maya was already 3 steps past it, and Reeves, who had come into the control cell 4 minutes earlier and caught the tail end, could see it happening on her face. "Ma'am," Maya said, "he isn't going to run either." "Why not?" "Because running is a confession, and Marcus Walsh has spent 12 years inside this system." She was talking faster now, the words stacking. He knows precisely how an investigation is built. He knows what evidence exists and what doesn't, because he's the one who destroyed the part that doesn't. He deleted the ghost terminal. My live records are gone. What's actually left right now tonight is a modification log showing that a SEAL support specialist altered classified profiles without authorization, an exercise where a civilian contractor's plan performed poorly, and a photograph of a man walking down a hallway with his head down. Reeves saw it land. "He's going to flip it," he said. "He's going to flip it," Maya said. "He is going to file a security incident report against us. Unauthorized modification of classified evaluation records by a SEAL element and a Navy intelligence officer with no jurisdiction coordinated to sabotage a live joint readiness exercise and discredit a lawfully contracted vendor." Kirkland set the phone down slowly. "That report," she said, "would be factually accurate. Every word of it," Maya said. The report was filed at 1922. They knew because Kirkland's own inbox received an information copy flagged priority, routed through operational planning and coordination, which was Walsh's own division, recommending immediate suspension of clearance for all 6 personnel involved and referral to NCIS. Ethan read it over Kirkland's shoulder and laughed with nothing in it. "He's fast. He's had 12 years to think about how he'd do this if he ever had to," Maya said. "This isn't improvisation. This is a contingency he wrote a long time ago and kept in a drawer." Lucas was pacing the length of the control cell, hands on the back of his head. Okay, so what do we actually have, honestly? Somebody say it out loud." Nobody did, because the honest answer was a Marine colonel's professional judgment, an anomalous after-action dataset, and one very thin thread connecting Robert Keane to a data point that had existed for 4 days. Thin was not nothing, but thin was thin. "Say it," Lucas pushed. "Somebody say it." "We have enough to be investigated," Ryan said. "Not enough to be believed." That landed hard because it was true, and because Ryan said almost nothing, and therefore everything he said carried weight the others hadn't earned. Maya sat down at the control cell terminal. "Then we find something he didn't protect," she said. She pulled the Meridian contract file and read for 6 minutes without speaking. Reeves stood behind her the entire time and did not interrupt, because he had learned over 5 days that when Maya Carter went quiet over a document, the correct response was to let her finish. Then she said without looking up, "Ma'am, who signed the Meridian contract for this exercise?" Kirkland checked. "Contracting Officer, Marine Corps Installations West." "That's the signature. That's not what I asked." Maya turned. "Who submitted the technical requirements package? The document that specified what qualifications a vendor had to hold to be eligible to bid?" Kirkland went deeper into this file. Her expression changed by degrees, and then all at once. "Operational planning and coordination," she said. "Naval Special Warfare Command." Maya sat back in the chair. "Walsh's division wrote the requirements that made Keane's company the only qualified bidder," she said. Raghavan, the JAG Lieutenant Commander Kirkland, had woken up an hour earlier and who had walked into the control cell approximately 90 seconds before this sentence was spoken. Put her coffee down on the table hard enough to slosh it. "Say that again," she said. Maya said it again. "That's procurement fraud," Raghavan said. "That's procurement fraud," Maya agreed. "Which is a financial crime, which means it lives in a financial system, which means it exists in a database that Lieutenant Commander Marcus Walsh does not have, has never had, and could not possibly obtain the access to delete." For a second, nobody in the room said anything. Then Ryan from across the room, in a voice like a door closing, "He protected the intelligence trail. He protected the intelligence trail," Maya said. "He never once thought about the money." She did not sleep that night either. She spent 11 hours with a contracting specialist. Kirkland had woken at 21:30, and Raghavan, who turned out to be the kind of attorney who got visibly happier the worse the facts became. By 0900, Saturday, they had 8 contract awards across 4 years. 4 of them carried technical requirements packages, authored by the Operational Planning Division under Walsh's signature. All four specified vendor qualification criteria that only one company in the United States could satisfy. Total value, $19.4 million. Raghavan laid both hands flat on the table and looked at the stack like it was a meal. "This is clean," she said. "This is beautiful. Procurement fraud with a documented paper trail through named signatories and a demonstrable financial beneficiary. This doesn't go to a base commander. This goes to a United States attorney." Lucas, standing in the doorway with his arms folded, said, "That's it. That's the ending. Contract paperwork." Raghavan turned to look at him. "Petty officer," she said. "It's not the ending, it's the door. Right now, I can't put 7 dead operators in front of a jury, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise to make you feel better. But this puts Robert Keene and Marcus Walsh in interview rooms, under federal subpoena, with attorneys explaining exposure to them in dollars and years. And once 2 men who conspired together are sitting in separate rooms doing that math." She picked up the top folder. "They start talking about each other. That's how these things actually end. Not with the big thing. With the small, provable thing that pries the big thing open." Lucas looked at her for a moment. "Al Capone," he said. "Al Capone," Raghavan said. Federal agents arrested Robert Keene on Monday at 10:30 at Meridian's office in Coronado on a warrant for procurement fraud and unauthorized access to a protected government computer system. He did not resist. He did not appear surprised. He asked for an attorney in the first 11 seconds and said nothing further for the next 9 hours. Marcus Walsh was detained at 10:42 at Naval Base San Diego in the building where he had worked for 12 years at his own desk in front of 43 people in his division who watched it happen and would talk about nothing else for a month. He did not ask for an attorney. That was the part nobody expected. He sat down in an interview room with 2 NCIS agents, Raghavan and an investigator from the U.S. Attorney's Office, and at 13:38 he started talking, and he did not stop for 6 hours. Maya wasn't in the room. She was 2 doors down, watching a monitor, sitting very still with her hands folded in her lap. Ryan Mitchell sat down beside her at 13:41 and stayed there the entire time and did not say one single word, and Maya would remember that for the rest of her life. Walsh talked about the contracts. He explained the technical requirements packages in the flat procedural voice of a man describing paperwork. He described the ghost terminal, which he had built himself in the spring of 2023, and referred to it with no apparent awareness of how it sounded out loud, as an efficiency solution. At 16:02, an investigator asked him about the performance profiles. Walsh said he had provided them to Meridian for training realism enhancement. At 16:22, the investigator asked whether he understood that operational profile data he had transmitted to Meridian had subsequently appeared in engagements in which American service members were killed. Walsh said nothing for 41 seconds. Then he said, "I wasn't told what they did with it." Maya stood up and walked out. Ryan found her in this corridor 90 seconds later, with her back against the wall and her eyes closed and both hands pressed flat against the cinder block behind her, as though she needed something in the world to be solid. "He wasn't told," she said. "I heard." 7 people, Ryan. She opened her eyes. 7. And his defense, his actual spoken on-the-record defense, is that he didn't ask. Ryan didn't try to fix it. That was the thing she'd remember about him afterward. Not the 57 seconds. Not the sniper's eyes. That he stood in a hallway with her and did not attempt to make an unbearable thing bearable, because he understood that some things are supposed to be unbearable, and the attempt to soften them is its own kind of insult. "Yeah," he said. "That's usually what it is. It's never a villain. It's a guy who found a way not to ask." At 19:47, the investigation asked Marcus Walsh one final question of the day. It wasn't on anyone's list. It came from Raghavan, who had spent the dinner break rereading Maya's incident summary and had noticed a line that had been sitting in that document for 5 days without a single person connecting it to anything. "Commander Walsh," she said, "in June of last year did your division process a records query regarding a retired instructor named Thomas Carter, behind the glass?" Maya Carter stopped breathing. Walsh looked down at the table. He was quiet for a long time, longer than the 41 seconds long enough that one of the NCIS agents started to repeat the question, and Raghavan put a hand up to stop him. Then Walsh said, "That wasn't me." "Who was it?" "I don't know." "Commander." "I don't know." His voice cracked for the first time in 6 hours. It came down through the terminal. It wasn't a request. It didn't come with a routing slip. There was no requesting office. It was a query. Somebody used the access I built to look up a man who'd been retired 11 years. And I never asked why, because I never asked anything about anything. That was the whole... He stopped. "That was the whole arrangement," he said. Raghavan leaned forward. "When?" "June 14th, Walsh said. Maya put her hand flat against the glass. "Because Thomas Carter had died on June 19th. 5 days. That was the number that lived in Maya Carter's chest for the next 72 hours. Not 14 months. Not 12 incidents. Not 7 dead. 5 days between a query and a funeral." Ryan found her at 2140 that night, in the empty conference room down the hall, sitting at the head of a table with nothing in front of her. No laptop, no folder, no coffee. Just her hands flat on the surface, and her eyes fixed on the far wall. "You've been in here 2 hours, he said. "I know." Reeves asked. "I know." Ryan pulled out a chair and sat. "Say it out loud," he said. "Whatever you've been running in a loop in here for 2 hours. Say it to me instead." Maya was quiet for a moment. "My father died of a cardiac event," she said. "At home, alone. He was 61. He'd had a stent placed 2 years earlier. There was an autopsy, because there's always an autopsy when someone dies alone, and the autopsy found exactly what everyone expected it to find, and I flew out and I buried him, and I went back to work in 11 days, because that's what he would have wanted, and I told myself that was strength. And now somebody pulled his file 5 days before it happened," she said, "and I don't know what to do with that." Ryan didn't answer right away. "You want my honest read," he said finally. "Yes. Your honest read is going to hurt." "I've had a hurting kind of week." Ryan leaned forward and put his forearms on the table. "There is no version of this where a heart attack is an assassination," he said. "Not from Keene. Not from a man running a contracting company out of Coronado who sells training packages to foreign clients. That's not the shape of him. He's a salesman with a security clearance and a moral hole where his spine should be. He's not the other thing." "Then why the query?" "That's the right question," Ryan said. "And it's not the same question as the one you've been sitting in here asking yourself for 2 hours." Maya looked at him. "What was the question I was asking?" "You were asking whether you missed something that killed your father," Ryan said. "That's grief. Grief always eventually finds a way to make itself your fault." Maya's jaw tightened. "That's not..." She stopped. Exhaled. "That's exactly what I was asking." "I know," Ryan said. "I recognized it." Reeves came in at 22:10 with 2 cups of coffee and set one in front of her without asking whether she wanted it. He had spent the drive back from 29 Palms doing his own arithmetic, and he had arrived at a conclusion, and he had decided that the conclusion belonged to her before it belonged to anyone else. "I want to tell you why I think someone pulled your father's file," he said. Maya looked up. "I've been thinking about it since Raghavan asked the question," Reeves said. "And I keep coming back to one thing. What was Thomas Carter at the end of his life not to you, to the community?" "He was retired." "He was retired for 11 years, Reeves said. "He wasn't a threat. He wasn't a witness to anything. He didn't have access to a single classified system. There is no operational reason on this earth to look up an 11-year retired instructor." "Then what's the reason?" "How wasn't the target," Reeves said. "You were." Maya went very still. "June of last year," Reeves said. "What were you doing?" She didn't have to think about it. "I'd just been transferred to the assessment desk. I'd been in the seat about 6 weeks. So somebody looked at a new analyst who'd just landed in a position with visibility on operational intelligence packages," Reeves said, "and they ran a background sweep. Standard practice for anyone building an operation inside a system. You don't just watch the seat, you watch who's sitting in it. And when they pulled your background, one name came up that would have stopped them cold. Maya understood before he finished. His, she said. His, Reeves said. Because anybody in that division old enough to have been around in 2003 knows exactly who Thomas Carter was. They pulled his file because they wanted to know whether the new analyst on the assessment desk was his daughter. Because if she was, that changed their risk calculation entirely. Ryan let out a slow breath. That's it. That's the whole thing. 5 days later he died, Maya said. 5 days later, he died of a stent failure at 61 years old, alone in his house in Virginia. Reeves said. And the two facts have nothing to do with each other, except that they happened close together, and your brain has spent 5 days trying to weld them into a story, because that's what brains do to people who've lost somebody. Maya's hands were shaking. She looked at them like they belonged to someone else. I've been carrying it since 1847 this afternoon, she said. I know. I built an entire theory in my head. 6 hours. I had a whole architecture. I know, Reeves said. You want to know how I know? How? Because I did the same thing after Irongate, he said. 2 men I knew. And for 8 months I ran a version in my head where I could have stopped it if I'd read a report more carefully. It was a very good theory. It was extremely detailed. It was completely false, and it cost me 8 months and most of my marriage. Maya laughed once, a wet, broken, involuntary sound. Then she put her face in her hands, and for the first time in 14 months, Maya Carter cried. Reeves didn't touch her. Ryan didn't move. They sat there with her and let it happen, and neither one of them said a single word until she was done. It took 11 weeks. That was the part nobody put in the story afterward, because 11 weeks of federal procurement litigation didn't make for a good telling. But that was the actual shape of it. Robert Keene's attorney fought the procurement charges for 19 days before the U.S. Attorney's Office produced the second set of contract awards, the ones from 2022 that Maya had found in week 3, which established a pattern rather than an incident and moved the exposure from a fine into a sentencing range. Keene took a meeting on day 22. He talked on day 24. What he said in that room did not become public for another 4 months, but Raghavan called Maya the night it happened at 23:18 and said one sentence. He named the clients. Maya sat down on the edge of her bed. How many? 4, Raghavan said. 2 of them were exactly who you'd expect. One of them was a company that no longer exists. And one of them, she paused. One of them is a name that made a man from the FBI stand up and leave the room to make a phone call. Which one? I can't tell you that. Priya. I can't tell you, Raghavan said. Not because I don't want to. Because as of about 40 minutes ago, this stopped being my case. Maya was silent. Is it going to be pursued? She said. It's going to be pursued by people whose entire job is pursuing that specific thing, Raghavan said. And Maya, I want you to hear this from me tonight, because tomorrow you're going to read a memo that says it in worse language. You are not going to be part of that. They're going to thank you, and they're going to wall you off, and it's going to feel like being pushed out of your own house. I know, Maya said. Do you? I've known since the first week, Maya said. You don't get to close the file the way you want to close it. You close the part you can close. Raghavan was quiet a moment. Who told you that? I told myself that, Maya said, in a vehicle on Highway 62, about 90 minutes after I lost my evidence. Marcus Walsh pled guilty on a Tuesday. Conspiracy to defraud the United States. Unauthorized access to a protected computer. Unlawful disclosure of national defense information. He was sentenced to 11 years. At the sentencing hearing, his attorney made an argument about a man who had made a series of small compromises over a long period of time without ever making a single large one, who had never sat down and decided to betray anyone, who had simply one accommodation at a time, stopped asking questions until there were no questions left to stop asking. The judge listened to all of it. Then she said, "Counsel, I've heard that argument in this courtroom perhaps 200 times. It is always true, and it never matters. 7 men are dead. Your client's failure to ask why is not a mitigating factor, it is the mechanism. Maya was in the gallery for that. She was in the fourth row in uniform, and when Walsh was led out, he looked directly at her the only time in 11 weeks that he had, and she held his eyes and did not look away, and she did not feel anything she had expected to feel. Not satisfaction, not rage, just a kind of flat, exhausted clarity, and one thought that arrived so precisely she almost said it out loud. You were never the enemy. You were the door somebody else walked through. The 7 families were notified in March. That was Kirkland's doing. She fought for it through 3 separate offices over 5 weeks, and she won it. And it was the single accomplishment of her career that she would later say she was proudest of, which is a remarkable statement from a woman with a Bronze Star. Because the families had all been told the same thing 4 years running bad intelligence. Operational risk. Nobody's fault. And that had been a lie. Not a malicious one. An institutional one, the kind that gets told because the true answer is unavailable, and the family in front of you needs something, and you give them the closest thing you have. But it had still been a lie, and in March, 7 families received a formal correction to the record. Maya was asked whether she wanted to be present for any of the notifications. She said no. Reeves asked her why 3 days later in the training bay, while the team was resetting equipment. Because it isn't about me, she said. Those families don't need to meet the analyst. They need the Navy to stand in their living room and say the words. If I'm there, it becomes a story about a person. It should stay a story about an institution admitting it failed them. Reeves looked at her for a long moment. Your father would have said the same thing, he said. Maya's hand stopped moving on the equipment. You never told me the whole story, she said. About 2003. Reeves set down the harness he was holding. You want it. I want it. High gave it to her standing up in a training bay, with 4 operators pretending very hard not to listen and doing a terrible job of it. 8 of us, Reeves said. Failed extraction in the Kunar Valley. The pickup didn't come. The alternate didn't come. We had a compromised position, 3 wounded, and about 90 minutes of dark left. He was with you. How was an outside consultant on a joint element? He wasn't supposed to be on that objective. He'd argued his way onto it that morning because he didn't like the movement plan and wanted eyes on it. Reeves almost smiled. That was Tom. He never once in his life stayed in the room he was assigned to. What did he do? He read the ground, Reeves said. That's it. That's the whole thing. Everybody else was doing math on ammunition and time and casualties, and Tom sat down against a wall in the dark and did math on terrain. He'd spent 4 hours that afternoon, watching how the local traffic moved through that valley, and he'd noticed that there was a route the locals used at night that wasn't on any of our maps, because nobody had ever bothered to ask why the foot traffic went the long way around. And there was a reason. There was a reason. The short way was mined, and everyone in that valley had known it for 11 years. Reeves shook his head. He walked 8 men and 3 casualties out along a goat path because he'd spent an afternoon watching people who weren't important to anybody. Nobody got a scratch. Maya didn't say anything. He never got a medal for it, Reeves said. It never went in a report properly, and I asked him about it once years later why he didn't push for it. You know what he said? What? He said, Danny, the day I need somebody to hand me a piece of metal to know what I did. I've got a problem, no metal fixes. Maya laughed. It came out cracked. That's him, she said. That's exactly him. Yeah, Reeves said. It is. The review board convened in April. Because Maya Carter had in fact committed a crime. She had modified classified performance profiles inside a Navy evaluation system without authorization, and Aaron Walker had executed the modification with his credentials, and Daniel Reeves had authorized it, and none of that was erased by the fact that it had worked. The board sat for 2 days. On the second day, they asked Maya whether she would do it again. Her counsel had prepared an answer. It was a good answer. It contained phrases like, given the extraordinary circumstances and after exhausting available channels, and it had been carefully engineered to sound like remorse without actually being remorse. Maya didn't use it. Yes, ma'am, she said. I'd do it again. Her counsel's pen stopped. The board president, a rear admiral named Foster, looked up. Captain, I'd encourage you to consider that answer carefully. I have, sir, for 4 months. Then elaborate. Maya stood. Sir, I reported a suspected compromise of operational intelligence through proper channels on the 14th of October. The investigation was closed in 48 hours by an officer who is now serving 11 years in federal custody for the exact conduct I reported. She kept her voice level. The system I was instructed to trust was the system that was compromised. Trusting it further would not have been discipline. It would have been abdication. You're describing a situation, Foster said, where an officer decides unilaterally that the rules do not apply to her. No, sir. I'm describing a situation where an officer decided that the rules had already been suspended by someone else, and the only remaining question was whether anybody was going to do something about it. Silence in the room. You understand the precedent that creates, Foster said. I understand the precedent the alternative creates, sir, Maya said. If the answer to a compromised oversight channel is, use the compromised oversight channel, then the first person to compromise it wins permanently. That's not a rule. That's a vulnerability with a signature block. Foster looked at her for a long time. Sit down, Captain, he said. The board issued a letter of censure. It went in her permanent file. It cited unauthorized modification of classified records and acknowledged in the final paragraph that the conduct occurred in the context of a validated compromise and resulted in the identification of 2 individuals subsequently convicted in federal court. Aaron Walker received a letter of caution. Daniel Reeves received nothing at all, which surprised everyone, including Reeves, until Kirkland told him, 6 weeks later, that Foster had killed the recommendation personally with a single line in a margin. Master Chief Reeves is the only person in this file who did his job. The censure meant Maya would not be promoted on schedule. She was told this in an office by a personnel officer who was clearly uncomfortable delivering it and kept using the phrase "at this time." How long? Maya asked. 2 cycles, possibly 3. Understood. Captain, I want to say a lot of people think this outcome is wrong. Maya stood up. A lot of people are entitled to think that, she said. I broke a rule and the rule broke back. That's how it's supposed to work. If it hadn't, I'd have a different problem. She got as far as the door. Captain? She turned. For what it's worth, the personnel officer said. My brother was on the Iron Gate element. Maya stopped. He came home, the officer said. He's fine. But I've read the corrected record, and I know now that the reason 2 of his friends didn't come home wasn't what we were told for 4 years. He cleared his throat. So, for what it's worth. Maya held the door frame for a second. It's worth a great deal, she said. She stayed in the Navy. That surprised some people. It didn't surprise Reeves, and it didn't surprise Ryan, and it didn't surprise Kirkland, who had been in the service long enough to know that the ones who leave after something like this are the ones who thought the institution was supposed to be perfect, and the ones who stay are the ones who never thought that in the first place. She went back to the assessment desk. Within a year, the Navy implemented a set of access controls on evaluation performance profiles that were in substance exactly the 7 recommendations Maya had submitted in a memo nobody read for 8 months. Her name wasn't on the final policy. Somebody in a different office rewrote her language and put a different signature block on it. Ethan Cole found out about it and was furious for a week. That's your policy, he said, word for word. 2 of the paragraphs are literally your paragraphs. I know. And you're fine with that. Ethan, she said. Do the profiles have access controls on them now? Yes. Then it worked, she said. That's the entire objective. Everything else is vanity. Ethan stared at her. You are the most frustrating person I've ever met, he said. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment. I know, Maya said. I took it as one anyway. Joel. 3 years later, a young petty officer named Delgado asked Master Chief Daniel Reeves whether the story was true. He asked it the way people always asked it. half embarrassed, expecting to be told it was exaggerated, because by then, the story had been told so many times through so many hallways that it had acquired the shape of a legend, and the version Delgado had heard involved a woman who beat 5 seals in under a minute with her bare hands, which sounded exactly like the kind of thing that gets bigger every time somebody repeats it. Reeves was 64 by then, still teaching, still refusing to retire. "Which part?" he said. "The 57 seconds, Master Chief." "That part's true." Delgado's eyes widened. "All 5 of you. All 5 of us." "How?" And Reeves, who had told this story maybe 40 times and had never once told it the same way, set down what he was holding and gave the young man the only answer that had ever mattered. "You want to know what actually happened in that room," he said. "Everybody focuses on the wrong part. They think the story is that a woman put 5 operators on the deck. That's not the story. That's the advertisement." "Then what's the story?" "The story is that she walked in with nothing," Reeves said. "No rifle, no gear, no rank that outranked anybody, no credential we recognized, no backup, no authority, no institutional support, and a name none of us knew. She had exactly one thing: she'd done the work. Nobody asked her to do it. Nobody was going to thank her for it. The system had already told her to stop, and she'd kept going anyway on her own time for 2 weeks alone." Delgado was very quiet. "She came into that room," Reeves said, "because she needed 5 men to believe something that no document could make us believe. And she knew we wouldn't listen to a 27-year-old analyst with no combat record. She was right, we wouldn't have. So she made you listen." "She made us listen," Reeves said. "And here's the part I want you to actually take with you, petty officer, because you're going to hear this story 100 more times, and every version is going to be about the fight." "Yes, Master Chief." "She never threw a single strike," Reeves said. "Not one. In 57 seconds against 5 men, she never hit anybody. Every single thing she did was a redirect. She used what we brought and gave it back to us." He tapped the table once. "That's not a fighting style. That's a whole way of being in the world. Her father built it, and she inherited it, and it's the reason 2 men are in federal prison, and 7 families got the truth." Delgado thought about it. "Master Chief," he said, "where is she now?" Reeves smiled. "Commander Carter," he said, "is running the Operational Intelligence Assessment Division, the one that reviews everything before it goes to planning." He picked his gear back up. "Turns out they eventually gave the job of guarding the door to the only person who ever noticed it was open." Maya Carter kept exactly one thing from those 4 days. Not the censure letter, not the corrected records, not the news clippings from Keene's sentencing, or the framed commendation that arrived 4 years late from an office that had spent a decade pretending it hadn't happened. She kept the photograph, the grainy printout from a security camera in an administrative annex. A man walking down a hallway with his head down, carrying a folder badge angled 2 degrees toward the light. The image that any competent attorney would have destroyed in 20 minutes. The one that proved nothing on its own and everything in the end. She kept it in her desk drawer, and every time a young analyst came into her office, convinced that they had noticed something small that nobody else had noticed, and that it was probably nothing, and that they didn't want to waste anyone's time. She took it out and put it on the desk in front of them. And she told them what her father had told her in a kitchen in Virginia when she was 19 years old, and certain she had misread something. "A weapon can be taken from you," she'd say. "Equipment fails, rank gets stripped, authority gets revoked, systems get compromised, and every single institution you will ever trust will eventually fail you at exactly the moment you need it most." Then she'd tap the photograph. "But nobody on this earth can take away what you noticed. Nobody can take away the fact that you did the work when no one asked you to. And nobody, not a rank, not a system, not a man with 12 years and a clearance and every advantage you don't have, can take away what you're willing to walk into a room and prove." Maya Carter walked into that room with no rifle and no fear. She walked out with something no weapon has ever given anyone. She walked out having been believed.